Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy Fanfics, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Luffy Took on Celestial Dragons to Save Foosha Village. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. By Luffy. Next time you see me we'll both be pirates. Ace, 17 years old, shouts as his boat drifts further into the sea. I'll be much stronger by then too. You just wait. I'll beat you. 14-year-old Luffy shouts back, one hand cupping the side of his face and the other waving madly. By Ace. We'll look for you in the newspapers. Don't forget to write. Makino. The mayor and the bandits all wave along with Luffy, shouting their goodbyes until they were but specks in the distance to Ace. Ace stops waving and grips his hat to keep it from blowing off. He gazes fondly at the island he grew up on, taking in its features before he leaves and doesn't see it for a long time. Maybe never again. He thinks to himself. The call to adventure may be so great that he wouldn't ever want to return to the boring clump of dirt full of snotty noble. The ocean was also a dangerous place, and he could perish at any moment. Ace shakes his head to clear it. He's supposed to be worried about Luffy, not himself. That idiot got into more trouble than it was worth. Are you sure you're all right with me going? Ace, stop being annoying. We promised Sabo we would leave at 17 years old. But what if you get hurt? There's the bandits and Makino. What if you have trouble hunting boars? Or you run into the Tiger Lord? I'm stronger now, Ace. But what if? Ace. Ace groaned, then walked up to Luffy, pulling him tightly into a hug. He placed his chin on Luffy's head and sighed deeply. I'm sorry, Lou. I'm just a paranoid older brother. Luffy chuckled and hugged Ace back. Don't worry about me. It's time you had fun for yourself. Start the path to your dream and live life with no regrets. Ace kissed the top of his brother's head and squeezed him tighter. Thanks, Lou. Ace keeps watching as the island shrinks more and more into the distance. When the treetops finally disappear from his view, he turns to the horizon and feels the buzz of excitement running through his veins. It was time to start his adventures. Luffy waves until he can't see Ace anymore, a wide grin remaining on his face. As soon as he disappears, Luffy runs into the forest. Luffy, where are you going? Makino asks him. Luffy screeches to a halt, kicking up dust near his feet. To train, of course. I can't let myself be beaten by Ace. He says as if it's completely obvious. Why don't you come with us? The mayor trails off when he notices Luffy already left, crashing through the forest. The mayor sighs and Makino giggles. Come on everyone, let's go celebrate Ace's departure at the party bar. My treat, Makino says happily. The bandits cheer and they all go to drink all night long. 2 weeks later, at the party bar, Makino stands behind the counter drying a beer glass. In front of her is the mayor, sipping a cup of coffee instead of an alcoholic beverage. I swear the next time Garp visits, which is in. The mayor looks around Makino to the calendar behind her. 3 months, he's going to have a heart attack. Makino places the cup away into a cupboard and takes another from the sink. Ace-kun and Luffy-kun are only following their dreams. She says. Whoop slap snorts. Becoming pirates isn't a dream. They'll turn into tyrants. They aren't that different from tyrants now, am I right? She argues with an amused smile. Whoop Slap leans back into the stool and takes a big gulp of his coffee. With Ace-kun, Garp is going to put double the amount of training into Luffy. Makino giggles and Whoop Slap stands, digging his hand in his pocket for money. Makino holds a hand up to him. On the house today, Mayor. Whoop Slap thanks her and exits through swinging doors. Not even a few seconds later, a group of sketchy-looking people stomp in arrogantly. We want sake. One of them demands, waving a finger in the air. Right away, sir. Makino hurries to get their drinks and places them quickly on their table. There is about 5 of them, and they drink in a tight circle, talking to each other rather quietly. It strikes Makino as odd from their loud entrance, but she dismisses her suspicions. They were customers. Makino returns to her original position drying glasses, but keeps a careful eye on them in case they wanted anything. Suddenly the doors burst open and Luffy stands there in all his glory. Makino, I need meat, he declares loudly. Makino chuckles and nods to the stool in front of the bar. Come sit down then. Luffy bounds over to the bar and bounces eagerly in his seat. Luffy stiffens when he feels eyes on his neck. He peers around his shoulder to the men at the far corner of the room. They all seem to look at him and Luffy keeps his back to them, uncomfortable. An inkling of recognition runs through him as he thinks about their appearance. Is that the kid? One whispers, but Luffy can hear it clearly in the empty bar. No doubt about it, he has the straw hat on his head. Then he's related to the other one. We knew hanging around here was a good idea. People's been saying they've seen him come around here a lot. Luffy shifts on his stool in discomfort, trying to ignore them. Here you go, Luffy. Makino places the large steak in front of Luffy and he brightens up a bit. He eats it quickly, but nowhere near his normal pace. Eventually the group leaves and Luffy sighs in relief. Makino notices his behavior and leans on the bar, elbows propping her head up. Is there something wrong, Luffy-kun? she asks, a thoughtful look on her face. Luffy reluctantly meets her gaze, then swallows the remainder of his steak. I think I know who they are. I've seen those people doing dirty jobs for the nobles in High Town, he says. Makino tilts her head in confusion. But I thought nobles don't like to associate with, commoners. Even though they're too dirty, that makes them perfect to do the jobs that nobles don't want to do. He shrugs. Makino's mouth goes taut and she takes his plate away to wash. But what's got you so upset? Luffy shuffles uncomfortably. It's not normal for them to come around Foosha Village. They usually stay around Low Town and Grey Terminal. Makino dunks the mugs into the sink and begins scrubbing them. Well, if what you say is true and they do usually stay in Low Town, then they shouldn't be coming around anymore. Luffy hesitates, but decides to believe her. With a smile, he changes the subject and talks to her about his latest fighting move. In the months that pass, Luffy trains hard despite his brother being gone. In this time, he sees Ace's wanted poster in the newspaper. No way, Ace joined another pirate crew. Luffy exclaims as he reads his brother joined the Whitebeard pirates. Why wouldn't he be a captain? I guess Ace must really like them. Luffy laughs. As long as Ace found a nice crew who made him happy, what was there to complain about? On another side of the island up in High Town, a noble was reading the very same paper Luffy was. He looks at the wanted poster in disgust as he recognizes the smirking face. So, Gall, D. Roger's little admirer has finally made his mark on the world. The noble sneers. It was not that hard to identify that the pirate in the paper was the former rodent who scrounged around High Town. Flashback. Boris turned the corner of the dirty streets in a hurry. He stumbled over the puddled pavement but held his pace, gripping several books to his chest in fear of dropping them. His master was already angry at him for retrieving the wrong books. If he dropped the right ones now, he would be severely punished. Maybe he'll beat me with the pipe this time, Boris thought with a gulp. The sound of boisterous laughter in between nearby shops made him slow down to look. At the back of the alley was a group of gruffly-looking men laughing and patting each other on the back. What made Boris's eyes widen was a small child, no older than 10, glaring at them with shaking fists. What startled Boris was the boy's eyes. They were full of darkness and hate that only burned brighter whenever the men spoke. But something about the child was familiar to him. He just couldn't put his finger on it. What if Roger had a son? The child asked quietly. If Roger had a son, well, he should die, of course, just like his son of a bitch father. One junkie cackled. Rot in hell is more like it. He would be the biggest sin on this earth. Boris noticed how deadly calm the boy suddenly seemed. Don't know what whore would make that. The child seemed to snap at that comment and punched the guy in the face. Hey, another shouted in protest but soon received a blow to the gut, making him topple to the ground. As the boy progressed in defeating them all, that's when the servant remembered him. He has seen this event play out before, every week in fact. The same boy would ask the same question and receive the same answer, which would end up with the same results, someone getting beat up. When the child bolted away from the scene, so did Boris, deciding he took too much time observing. Flashback done. The servant had informed him about that child after Sabo died, remembering the incident when they once saw Porcas in town. Outlook hates that child and his little companion. It was their fault he lost an heir to his family and caused him massive embarrassment amongst the members of high society. He hates those rats with a passion and always wanted to dispose of them. Outlook even took the time spreading rumors about the devil children around town, in hopes that someone would kill them on sight. However, a recent turn of events has occurred. One of the brats who he now knows as Porcas Diaz has become a well-known pirate away from this island. That would mean no revenge for him. There was the younger one though. He hasn't seen the boy in a while and lost track of him. But recently a small group of bandits had come across him in Foosha Village on the edge of the island. They said that he came down there regularly to talk to a barmaid. A sly grin stretches across Outlook's face. Satisfied with himself, he uncrosses his legs, sets his tea down and picks up the snail phone. He has a celestial dragon to call. Luffy finds himself walking into Makino's bar like he has done every day now. Without Ace around, it gets pretty lonely. Hey Makino, he begins as he plops on the stool in front of the bar. Makino is washing the dishes, but she makes a hum to let him know he's got her attention. Has Gramps stopped by at all? He asks while placing his head in his hands, wearing a troubled expression on his face. No, he hasn't. She answers honestly. I'm actually quite surprised. Garp-sen usually comes around now every few months. Luffy only shrugs then grins widely. Shishishi, at least I won't have to go through training for a while. Or Fist of Love. Suddenly the swinging doors bang open, grabbing the attention of Makino and Luffy. A man stumbles through the door, pausing to catch his breath. Makino rushes from around the bar to the gasping man. Are you okay, Hans? She asks, a little confused over his outburst. With wide eyes he looks up at them. The nobles are here. They want everyone outside right now. Apparently they're looking for someone. He bursts. Nobles. Luffy's face screws up in confusion and disgust. That's not all. They have a celestial dragon with them. Luffy immediately feels a spark of anger. Those dragon whatevers are the ones who killed Sabo. I've got to go now, Makino. They said they would kill my family if I didn't spread the word. With that, he scampers out of the bar to the house across the street. Makino peeks from the doorway to get a glimpse of the incoming nobles. The small population of Foosha was crowded on both sides of the street, ranging from crying infants to grumpy old fishermen. A sliver of fright goes into her heart and she turns back to Luffy. Sensing the boy's hostility, Makino tells him to stay put. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Then she walks out the door, down the road, and stands next to the hairdresser of the town, exchanging whispers. Luffy, being Luffy, couldn't sit still and disobeys Makino by sneakily looking outside. He sees the villagers stiff with fear and suspicion huddling on either side of the road, watching a plump figure strutting in the center. Must be the dragon guy, Luffy thinks angrily. He looks a little off to the side and notices another figure walking slightly behind the celestial dragon. His eyes widen slightly in shock, then narrow in anger when he recognizes Sabo's dad. Who is this boy again? Luffy hears the celestial dragon ask. He sounds slightly bored and his face is screwed up in a permanent scowl. Outlook seems surprised to be addressed and coughs to clear his throat. A close friend, or perhaps brother of the notorious Fire Fist Ace. He reminds the high noble with an excited yet quiet tone. The celestial dragon grunts in understanding, but has a glint of excitement in his eyes. Luffy's anger bubbles up at the second but evaporates when he sees Makino approaching the men tentatively. She put on a kind smile, but Luffy could see her hands shaking. Is there something you gentlemen need? She asks, her smile not faltering. Suddenly the celestial dragon slaps Makino across the face with the butt of his gun. She falls to the ground with a startled yelp and cradles her reddened cheek with her hand. You inferior filth. I am St. Garlo. You cannot just talk to me whenever you please, nor look me in the eye. He spat. Luffy immediately abandons his hiding spot and charges into the square, helping Makino stand up. Luffy, Makino hisses to him quietly, surprised and concerned that he came. Outlook immediately lights up and he points to Luffy eagerly. That's him. That's the boy. The celestial dragon looks Luffy over for a second, then snaps his fingers. Guards, grab him. Suddenly Marines pour out from the docks and grab his arms, leaving him immobile. Luffy struggles against them in vain, immensely confused of what's happening. What are you doing? Let Luffy go. The town erupts into protests, advancing towards the Marines holding Luffy captive. The Marine pulls out a sword and holds it close to Luffy's neck, making the town freeze on the spot. Don't come any closer, the Marine warns. With everything still and quiet, St. Garlo waltzes up to Luffy. He places his hands on his hips and scrutinizes Luffy's face. So this is the devil child's brother, he mutters. Luffy feels slightly confused. Was he talking about Ace? Luffy glares at the ugly noble. Ace is not a devil child. He spat. Luffy was going to continue, but the guard flashed the sword at him, silencing him. The celestial dragon turns back to the town and clears his throat. I hereby decree that this town is guilty of harboring demons. Foosha Village is now a sin on this earth, the noble proclaims. He turns his back to the townspeople and snaps his fingers. This whole village will be my slaves to keep and sell. Guards, empty their houses of valuables and get them in cages for now. The guards take a step towards the citizens. You can't. St. Garlo turns back to a lone villager who has a desperate look on his face. You can't take this town. It's protected by Vice Admiral Garp the Fist. The town murmurs their agreement, but the noble merely scratches his stomach with a bored expression. I don't know and don't care who that is. The Navy works for me. The man takes a step back, defeated. This town will become a buying market, the celestial dragon continues. Any noble can pass by and buy the slave they want. Since I own you all, I will be in charge. The clearing is silent, taking the words in. Luffy's mouth is slightly agape and his eyes are wide. A woman shrieks in horror and the citizens start to flee. Guards, round them up immediately, St. Garlo demands, veins popping from his forehead. The Marines charge forward to apprehend the villagers by force. Outlook smirks as they are being beaten and dragged to the center of the square where they were chained. Luffy struggles against the arms holding him and bites one hard. The Marine screams and lets go, making it easy for Luffy to wrench his arm out of the other's hand. You brat. The guards leap at him and he ducks at the first punch. He kicks one in the face and sends him flying across the clearing. Luffy ducks just in time to avoid a sword slicing where his head was. He bounds back up and lands an uppercut to the grunt's jaw. The Marine falls to the ground unconscious and Luffy dusts his hands in satisfaction. I'm not weak, you know, he tells them with mocking disappointment. Luffy looks to the center of the square and sees that most of the villagers have been caught with only a few squabblers. He charges towards them, getting ready to pry the chains off. Stop! Something grabs Luffy's ankle and he face plants on the dirt. He tries to push up on his elbows, but to his surprise more and more weight was being added to his back. If it weren't for his devil fruit he would have suffocated. When a hand lands in front of his face he realizes the Marines were dogpiling him. Get off of him, Makino shouts from the group in the center. Several more protests. and yells of concern were sent until they yank him from under the pile. As soon as he snaps back into his original form, something clamps on his wrist and immediately drains his energy. Luffy couldn't find the strength to fight back as they tossed him to Makino. Luffy-kun, are you okay? She asks, concerned. Makino looks like she's about to cry. He nods weakly in response. Luffy turns his attention to his new shackle and tries to pry it off, but as soon as he grips it he feels his strength deplete significantly. Luffy feebly looks around and notices they're all huddled like cattle. The Marines are surrounding them at gunpoint, preventing them from escaping along with the chains that bound most of them. Just behind the Marines stood Outlook, scanning the area. There is also a lot of these rats in and around Grey Terminal who can be put into the collection. He suggests to the Celestial Dragon. Luffy's stomach falls. The bandits are out there. The High Noble waves his hand and grunts in acknowledgement. He walks to the forest with several guards. Outlook smirks evilly at Luffy as he follows behind. Suddenly the guards grab his arms and he is wrenched out of the crowd. Since the bracelet is sapping his strength, he can't put up much of a fight. Luffy could only kick weakly as they drag him away. He looks to the citizens and sees they are being treated in a similar manner. One guard picks Makino up roughly and begins dragging her. Leave Makino alone. He is cut off as they toss him in what appears to be a giant cage that already holds a good amount of people. The Marines shove a few more citizens in it and close the door when Makino is pushed in. Luffy. She quickly wades through the crowd and hugs Luffy tightly to her chest. He hugs her back and looks outside the cage where there were several more enclosures filled with people. Luffy silently hopes they wouldn't be kept in this cramped space for long as they could all barely fit. Beside him is a mother holding her crying baby while huddling against the corner. With pitying eyes, he watches as she tries to soothe him but fails continuously. Luffy angrily went against the bars. Hey, let us out of here. It's too cramped. He shouts to the nearest guards. Shut your trap, devil. You'll be in a proper facility soon once we start deconstruction. The guards laugh and walk away, leaving more people distraught. What do they mean deconstruction? They're going to destroy my home. Mommy, they can't do that. The dolly Papa gave me is at home. More children start to cry and the parents try their best to soothe them, struggling to keep their own emotions in check. Luffy sags to the ground and presses his palms to his eyes. Makino kneels down and strokes his hair. Luffy-kun, she asks, but to her surprise Luffy's shoulders were shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry everyone, it's my fault. Makino pulls him into a hug and shakes her head. No, Luffy, you have done nothing. Please don't blame yourself. Makino pleads. The hairdresser, Wanda, that Makino was talking to previously kneels down to Luffy. She's right. It's that damn noble's fault. More people offer their support to Luffy, not blaming him for their capture, but Luffy still can't help but feel bad. One man turns around and shakes his head in anger. He's only a child. He shouldn't have to feel this way. They spend the entire day and night in those cages, huddling for warmth and ignoring their growling stomachs. But the next day was one of deep sadness. That was the day they watched their village burn. Nothing was spared, not even Makino's bar that Luffy had visited since he could remember. He felt a part of himself crumble as it collapsed on itself. Get your damn hands off me. Luffy's head shot up at the familiar gruffly voice. Daten and the rest of the bandits bound by chains were being led to the cages. Upon further inspection, Luffy saw other people he recognized scouring Grey Terminal were also caught. As the bandits pass, Luffy flashes them a brief but guilty glance. However, Daten looks relieved when she sees him, but it left as quick as it came. The Marines shoved them into an already crowded cage and Magra beat against the bars with his fists. If you think you can keep us in here, you're sadly mistaken. Daten warns, biting on a cigarette. Day in and out the citizens grow more and more restless in the cages. The guards are often asked when the facility would be built so they could get some breathing room. But every time they would just laugh in their faces. After the third day, the Celestial Dragon struts up to the cages freshly bathed and fed. You will now be released from your cages. There were some gasps of shock and sags of relief. Where is the place we're supposed to stay? One man shouts. The Celestial Dragon's face turns up in disgust and he points to a nearby Marine. The Marine walks up to the man and smacks him in the face with the butt of his gun. The man falls back and the inhabitants of the cage back away. Do not speak to me, you filth. There is no place for you to be locked up. You will be building it yourselves so I do not have to waste Marines. He snaps and the Marines approach the first cage. Don't try anything funny. The grunt warns, opening the cage. But as soon as the door creaks open, a man shoots out and makes a beeline for the forest. Desperate from minimal food and water, the man is too fast for the Marines to chase. Shoot him now, St. Garlo demands. Several Marines hold up their rifles and shoot an array of bullets, all hitting their target. Makino gasps and covers Luffy's eyes so he wouldn't see. He was about to protest that he has seen these kinds of things before, but he let her try and protect him. No one tries to escape after that. They let themselves be led silently out of their cages and set to work. The citizens all work quickly and effectively despite their lack of food. 1 piece of bread and 1 glass of water per day under the hot sun. Here, Luffy. Makino pushes her piece of bread to Luffy while taking a gulp of her water. Have mine, she says as she wipes her mouth. She did this on some days, but in the end Luffy always gave his portions to her. He was hungry, more so than usual, but he was glad Makino was getting more to eat. They would get beat if they worked too slow or did something wrong. This usually consisted to a kick in the face or a smack with a gun. No breaks were given, even for the mothers who had to work with babies strapped to their chests. And it wasn't just the Marines who beat the newly made slaves. The Celestial Dragon would look upon their progress and deal blows when he saw somebody slacking off. At some point or another, people started to rebel, destroying parts of the complex or outright attacking the Marines. However, those who rebelled were taken and never returned, so everyone kept their intense hatred a secret. You get treated extra special today, Devil Brat. The Marine socks Luffy in the gut, making him bend forward and wheeze painfully. He was tied to a pole with his arms spread to both sides of his body. Oh, you don't like that? Well, have some more then. The Marine launches another and another and another punch at Luffy, and eventually his allies come to assist in the beating. He tries to hold in the tears and screams of pain, but it was really difficult. Even though he was at the brink of unconsciousness, he could see the sympathetic looks of the townspeople as they walked by. They want to help, but know very well that as soon as they open their mouths, a bullet would be there faster than the speed of light. Luffy closes one eye as a punch hits him particularly hard in the abdomen. That's when he sees Makino looking at him straight on with an enraged expression. Abandoning her work, she starts striding towards him with the intention of freeing Luffy. Alarm courses through him and he hisses loudly at Makino. The Marines mistake it for pain and laugh mockingly. Makino stops and they meet eyes in a silent mental battle. Luffy's eyes urge her to turn away and not get shot in the face, but she can't take seeing this anymore. To Luffy's luck, Wanda approaches Makino and places a hand on her shoulder. Wanda leans in and murmurs something in her ear. And to Luffy's relief, Makino backs away but would not tear her gaze from his form. He ends up staying on that pole for 2 days straight, worse than the regular, which only lasts a few hours with minimal provisions. When the 2 days were up, they let him down and ordered him to return to work. Luffy, come here. Luffy stumbles over to Makino and they both sit behind a stack of wood. She reaches for her dress and tears a chunk off the hem. You have to stop drawing attention to yourself, Luffy, she warns in a whisper, tying the cloth around his bruises. You know they dislike you more because you're Ace Kun's brother. Ukov, but Makino, I'm not going to be ashamed of Ace, and how can I just stand by while they beat on our friends? It's torturous watching his friends and neighbors being beat to the ground and not doing anything about it. Luffy, you're only 14. She scolds. He still feels guilty. My age doesn't matter. I'll kick all their asses as long as it saves someone else a beating. Makino just sighs and tends to his wounds, frequently glancing around to spot any guards. She finishes wrapping and helps him up to a standing position. Let's go organize those boards. It will cause you less strain. Makino leads Luffy to their station and they set to work. I promise, Makino. She looks at Luffy curiously. I'll get us out of here so we can be free again. So don't worry about me. He turns to her and grins widely, the first smile she's seen since they became slaves. Makino smiles and kisses the top of his head. Thank you, Luffy. After long grueling weeks, the prison was built and all the slaves were hooked up to chains in the cells. Each cell held around 6 people and it was rather small with minimal walking space. It didn't take long for nobles to come strolling in from Hightown to select a slave or 2 for their collection. It was a sad scene when one of their own was dragged away to a guaranteed horrible life. At least one other person would break down into sobs about how they were a husband, sister, or father. Luffy would cling to Makino at those times, trying to keep her away from the men who would potentially buy her. She wouldn't say anything. Makino only stroked his hair and pulled him close. Luffy almost jumps through the bars and bites the ugly, disgusting man who wouldn't stop looking at Makino like she was a piece of meat. Makino shuffles uncomfortably under the gaze and Luffy continues to glare. Suddenly, an idea springs to mind and Luffy leans over to whisper into Makino's ear. Her face screws up in confusion as he speaks. Make an ugly face. She breaks away and looks at him weird. Just trust me. Then Luffy turns his face into the weirdest thing Makino's ever seen in her life. Glancing at the noble, she sees how he looks at Luffy in disgust and understands. Makino complies with Luffy's request and makes herself look as unspeakingly ugly as possible. Luckily, the noble seems to quickly change his mind about his selection and walks away with a snort, muttering about mental ones. As soon as he was gone, they both sigh then start to giggle. At least they didn't have to worry about being bought. You're supposed to be a Marine, ain't ya? Then why are you hurting the public? It was late at night and the slaves were settling down to get some rest after another painful day. That was until one of the men snaps and starts berating the guards. Everyone is awake and stare wide-eyed at the one who can't handle it any longer. You good-for-nothing son of a bitch, what kind of hero are you? If I get out of here, I'll make sure to burn the Marine base to the ground. He sneers to the guard now standing in front of his cage. Tanner, stop it. Someone hisses behind him. Yeah, do you have a death wish? Another whispers furiously. but Tanner gives no indication that he hears them. Unfortunately, he should have listened because the Marine shoots him on the spot with a bullet right through the head. Somebody screams as the body falls with a sickening thud. With blood pooling everywhere, it was expected that the guard take the man away, but he merely leaves the body there and walks on. The people sharing the bloody cell scramble back to avoid the new corpse. "We need to escape. This is no place for my baby," shouts a skinny woman cradling her still child. Mumbles and shouts of agreement ripple through the men and women. "How the hell are we gonna do that?" Luffy recognizes Daden's now scratchy voice. Everyone breaks into murmurs with their cellmates. "Maybe Luffy can squeeze through the bars with his powers and free us," one man suggests. The room goes quiet and everyone save Makino all look at him questioningly. Luffy's head shrinks down in shame. "I can't. They put this weird bracelet on me that makes my powers disappear. I'm sorry everyone." An old man with a scraggly beard in the cell in front of Luffy stands. "It's all right, boy. It was merely a suggestion. We shouldn't have thought to burden you when you are already being treated the worst out of us." Luffy nods his head but keeps a troubled expression. "So what are we going to do now?" he asks. Makino places a comforting hand on his head. "If someone could make a distraction, then we could knock a guard out from the back and steal his keys," a skinny woman suggests. The man beside her nods his head eagerly. "Then we can riot and head towards Lowtown to hide. Maybe around Grey Terminal if there's good enough hiding spots." A teenage boy, no older than 17, speaks up. "Who can still fight?" he asks. "We're all pretty weak after this. Are we enough to take down fully trained Marines?" Silence stretches out before them. Luffy was about to speak up when Daden snorts. "Of course I can fight. What do you take us bandits for?" The rest of the bandits cheer in agreement. A man around 40 years old stands up. "I carry 70-pound sacks of flour every day. I think a few skimpy Marines wouldn't be a problem." He cracks his knuckles ominously. More volunteers pile up, and with that they have enough for a riot. The next day after their regular work shift, the slaves are all being led to their respective cells in heavy silence. "You're all a quiet bunch today," a Marine comments as he locks the remainder of Luffy's group in their cell. "Finally resigning to your fate, huh?" The Marine snickers, prodding Daden forward with the butt of his gun. The two Marines in the room start laughing. Suddenly Daden halts and blocks the path down the hallway. The Marine taps her with the gun, none too pleased. "What are you doing, you slave? Get moving," he shouts at her, but she stays rooted to the spot with her back to him. "He didn't give you orders to stop. Have you got brain damage?" The other Marine turns his attention from his previous spot to Daden. The slaves waiting behind Daden and the guards exchange looks, realizing their opening. With them distracted, the muscular slave from before smacks the guards over the head with a heavy pine. They drop to the ground with a thud out cold. "Get the keys," a slave behind bars shouts. A burly slave scoops up the keys and runs from door to door freeing the captives. Thank you. A woman with 2 children in hand bows in gratitude when her cage is open. "Don't thank me yet, lady. We've got to get out of here," he says gravely. He then turns to Luffy and examines his wrist cuffs. "Do you think any of those keys will work?" Luffy asks with big eyes. The slaves are milling around, meeting up with loved ones and trapping the 2 unconscious guards in cells. "I'm not sure." He trails off looking through the key ring, but finding no key small enough to fit in the lock. "Sorry, kid. We'll try and break those things off of you as soon as we get out of here," he says, placing a reassuring hand on Luffy's shoulder. Luffy smiles up at him and hugs him. "Thanks, old man." "Shishishi," he giggles. The man blushes lightly but lets himself be embraced. "It's Trevor," he corrects as Luffy releases him. Luffy grins even wider if that's possible and tips his hat. "Nice to meet you, Tractor. The name's Monkey D. Luffy and I'm going to be the Pirate King," he declares. Makino giggles at his side. "It's Trevor," he corrects, but it goes unheard by Luffy when he turns away. "Let's get out of here," he yells, and they do a battle cry in response. The slave group bolts through the door and zooms through corridors. Escapees, guards, capture them. One grunt yells when he spots the group. The armed Marines stream out of rooms and hallways straight for them. Get ready to fight. Trevor is the first to break from the pack and punch out 2 Marines immediately. Everyone, including Makino, all storm the guards, forming a full-blown riot. The nobles who were visiting all cower to the walls, terrified of the commotion. Amongst those nobles is St. Garlo, speaking low and urgent into a snail phone. Suddenly a large explosion goes off and people scream in terror. "We're doomed. How did they get an admiral here?" Dread piles up in Luffy's stomach when he sees a large admiral at the other end of the large hallway. He's a devil fruit user by the looks of it, with magma spurting out of his hands and body. "By the name of justice, I will get you all," he booms. Just then he sends magma straight out of his hands into nearby slaves. Everyone is scattering, terrified at the display, but the admiral is faster, catching and killing some who slip out of his path. Luffy is looking on enraged that all of his friends are dying or being kept here. He takes a step forward about to face the man when Makino grabs his arm and leads him down a series of hallways as far away from the scene as possible. Makino let go. He's destroying everyone. He protests while yanking his arm. Not now, Luffy-kun. You can't beat him. I'm sorry, but it's impossible, she says solemnly, shaking her head. But I'm strong, Makino. I can. You can't. He's shocked into silence at Makino's outburst. A wall explodes nearby. You're not going to risk your life for a hopeless cause. I'm not letting you die. I promised Ace-kun I'd look after you, and I will. Are we understood? She says, staring directly in his eyes. He nods slowly and notices for the first time the people around them. What are we going to do now? Wanda asks. Her perfectly curly hair is now frizzed and charred at the edges. We need to make a run for it, the woman with her crying baby says. The old man next to her nods and takes the baby from her. A grandparent apparently. Where to? He asks while bouncing the child. They all look around. If I remember correctly, we are near the main forum in the boiler room. If we head to the right, there should be an exit, the woman says, rubbing her chin in thought. Luffy beckons them and they stride towards the first corner. Luffy and the old man stick their heads out and see the passage is empty of any incoming marines. The coast is clear, let's go. Luffy hisses. Everything seems to be going fine. They are making a straight shot to the next hallway without leeway. All of a sudden, magma shoots out from the wall ahead of them, spilling all over the ground and blocking their path. The woman screams and Luffy and Makino stick their arms out to keep from falling into the lava. You can't escape me. The Admiral booms, his ball cap shadowing his raging eyes. He sends out another surge of lava and they all jump out of the way. The old man made a yelping noise as his foot got singed. Why are the Marines doing this to us? We haven't done anything wrong. It's the nobles who caused the destruction. Wanda hollers. She steadily walks closer to the raging Marine. Wanda, wait, the other woman warns, reaching out for her friend. But the Admiral struck fast, swinging a fist at Wanda and knocking her into the wall. They all gape as she slides to the floor with a thump. Wanda, the old man shouts in concern. He grips the baby tighter as the little tyke starts to whimper. How could you? The woman yells. She grabs a pipe that had fallen on the floor and rushes up to him, aiming to strike his head. Stop, Julia. You have your child to think about. The old man shouts. He runs after Julia to stop her. Stop resisting and cooperate. Face the consequences for going against the law. The Admiral swings his massive hand and magma surrounds the floor around the two. Grunts. He booms. Come take these scum away. Marines come out from the hulls behind him. Yes, Admiral Akainu, sir. They chant in unison. Makino grabs Luffy's wrist and backs them up slowly, much to Luffy's annoyance. He wants to beat this guy. But Makino, he thought guiltily. He can't leave her defenseless. However, as he looks to the Marines dragging an unconscious Wanda, injured father, daughter, and baby, he felt more rage pour into his stomach. Sir, that's the devil child. One Marine shouts, pointing directly at them. They freeze on the spot as Akainu stands up a little straighter, looking down at the pair intimidatingly. Oh, I haven't forgotten about him, he says, raising a magma fist, needing to get Makino out of there. Luffy spins around and grasps her upper arm. Let's go, he shouts. Not needing to be told twice, she hurtles down the hallway with Luffy. Where do you think you're going? Akainu teases. He holds his fists in the air and shoots magma meteors towards them. Luffy shoots forward and pulls Makino around the corner just as the magma balls land on their previous spot. Keep moving, he urges her. They run down the path that they came from, winding and twisting through the series of hallways. Magma rivers and beams shoot around them, destroying the walls and high ceilings. Panting, Makino looks behind her and is shocked to see that the Admiral and his subordinates are close. When they round another corner, Makino pushes Luffy into the nearest room. He turns around, waiting for her to come to, but she is closing the door. Luffy quickly sticks his foot in the door, stopping her from leaving. Makino, what are you doing? He asks confusedly, sliding his foot back into place. She sighs and closes the door further so only a crack remains. Go call Garp-san. There's a den mushy on the desk over there. I'll be a distraction to buy you time. But Makino, I can't let you do that. He protests with pleading eyes. She shakes her head no. If anyone will help us, it's Garp-san. Good luck, Luffy-kun. With that she closes the door and Luffy hears the click of the lock behind her. No. Luffy is about to go after her when he hears the crashing footsteps of the Admiral right outside his door. Luffy stiffens as the footsteps stop. He is careful not to take a breath as the doorknob slowly turns. A loud crash destroys the silence and Luffy jumps a little on the spot. He hears a shout from the Admiral and they leave him behind. That's probably Makino. Luffy scrambles for the den mushy. The faster he calls for help, the faster he can get back to Makino. After some quick shifting of papers, Luffy grabs the den and dials Garp's number that has been ingrained into his head since he was a kid. Listen here, this number will connect you directly to my emergency den mushy. So if something happens, call it. Don't forget it. Luffy lifts the phone to his ear and taps his foot impatiently on the floor. This was his emergency line, right? So why wasn't he picking up? Suddenly the ringing stops and Luffy's heart beats faster when he hears a clicking sound. Gramps, it's Luffy, he says, not waiting for a reply. The celestial whatevers took control of the town and made us all slaves. They burned everything down, Gramps, even the party bar. He felt himself choke up and tears fall down his face. You probably don't know because you would definitely protect the island if we needed help. But we need you right now because an admiral with lava is trying to get us all cause we escaped. That's how I got to this phone. But Makino is trying to be a distraction and I need help. So please, Gramps. He waits for an answer but it's dead silent on the other end. Gramps, are you there? He asks, but the silence is deafening. His face scrunches in despair but he tucks it away and leans on the desk. Please, I don't know what to do. He breaks down and his hands ball into fists. It's all my fault. They wanted me but they took the whole town and I'm not strong enough to stop them cause I'm a damn kid. He doesn't bother wiping away the flood of tears. Ace isn't here and I don't know what to do. I need help so please just answer. Anything please. But the silence only drags on and Luffy is crying in the phone waiting to hear something. The minutes feel like hours and he sags his head in despair. Their main source of help is eliminated. Damn it. Luffy hangs up the phone and pauses to think. Where was he going to turn to now? He brushes a hand on his arm, still shocked about Garp's lack of response. He decides he needs to find the next person he trusts. Ace. With new determination, Luffy runs to the door and throws it open. To see the utter destruction outside. Luffy's eyes widen as he steps out into the burning and crumbling hallway. The magma is dripping off the walls and melting spots in the ground. The ceiling has completely collapsed on itself and the red ash-filled sky is clearly visible. It was due to some sort of miracle that his room was spared. Luffy's mind reminds itself of his priorities and he turns down the last hallway where his mother figure went. Makino, he calls, hands cupping his mouth. With no response, he continues to explore the destroyed building while calling her name. Maki. Luffy's foot catches on a clump of debris and he falls face first on the dusty ground. He moans in pain and clenches his eyes shut as he slowly picks himself up. That's when he sees the man's hand. He probably would have missed it if he hadn't fell, as it is surrounded by cement ceiling and almost covered by the rocks that are crushing it. Luffy should have left it alone, but something made him lift the boulders off the fallen person. Once he has a whole arm uncovered, he notices the back of the head is untouched. What was unsettling was the pool of blood under it. With careful and shaking hands, Luffy turns the head on its side and his breath catches in his throat. Trevor. A sudden crash from further away makes Luffy's head snap up. With one last glance at Trevor, he sprints down the hallway dodging magma and falling cement. He can now hear the panicked murmurs of people and he rounds the corner to the old cells. Mina. They all turn their heads to Luffy and he can see Makino standing in the mix. Makino. He runs and hits the locks, but they stay firmly in place, only clattering against the bars with each hit. Luffy looks up to meet the people's eyes, expecting them to be trying to break the cage down. But they are all trying to shoo him away. Luffy-kun. Makino pushes past the crowd and grips the bars in front of his chest. Are you okay? He asks, voice and face laced with concern. But to his surprise, Makino grips the bars tighter, a desperate expression taking over her features. Get away. It's a trap. Suddenly something hard and solid smacks him hard in the side. He flies back at blinding speed and breaks through the wall on his left. There's a ringing in his ears, but he makes out the cries of protest from the villagers. He remains in the rubble, stunned for a moment but tries to get up soon after. The sharp pain to his hip makes him flinch and settle back down. Luffy scowls at the bracelet that's blocking his powers, knowing he wouldn't be hurting as much with it gone. The ground rumbles like an earthquake and Luffy squeezes his eyes shut trying to keep still. When the trembling stops, he slowly opens his eyes to reveal the massive figure in front of him. So you are the devil child's brother. I guess that makes you equally monstrous, HM. He says, raising a fist that quickly transforms into magma. Stop calling Ace a devil. Luffy's temper flares. He's not a monster. He's my brother. Admiral Akainu snorts and clenches his fist. You shouldn't be so friendly with Fire Fist Ace. Any pirate is a monster, no matter whom they are. Luffy's vision is suddenly blurred as he's kicked so hard that he flies through and out of the building. He flips a few times in the air and rolls across the barren and destroyed village. Luffy finally skids to a stop on his hands and knees, kicking up dust around him. He falls on one elbow and wheezes on his hurting lungs. I need to find Ace. He thinks absently, wobbling to a standing position. Luffy thinks of the trapped citizens and decides if he was going to help them, he has to take matters into his own hands. Suddenly magma and debris explode from where he flew through the wall. Admiral Akainu steps through the newly made space and walks towards him at a leisurely pace. Luffy spins around and runs into the forest to get away. I'll give you a small head start, Rat, but it won't help you much, he says semi-amusedly. Meanwhile, Luffy scrambles through the trees and debris to find a way out of this chase. The Admiral is far behind and Luffy can't see him anymore, but the crunching of his massive feet lets Luffy know he's still there. A shot of magma has Luffy veering to the side and into a tree. He spins around and is shocked to see dozens of magma bullets speeding towards him. He dodges a few, then scrambles through the forest again, trying to avoid his incoming death. You can't hide anymore. Expose yourself and let me purge you from this earth. Akainu's voice reverberates through the forest just as Luffy reaches a cliff overlooking the coast. Just then, a particularly large magma bullet speeds through his arm. He screams in anguish and stumbles forward to the ledge. The footsteps getting closer is the only thing that keeps Luffy going, and he bites his lip to keep out the moans of pain. He manages to stumble into nearby bushes and collapse in the undergrowth. The Admiral walks out of the forest on the side opposite of him, and Luffy keeps silent as he walks forward. I heard your screams. I know you're here, he says into the air, and Luffy tenses, gripping his heavily bleeding shoulder. Akainu steps slowly to the edge of the cliff. Luffy can't see what he's looking at, but he assumes it's just his blood, judging by the large red splotch staining the grass. The Admiral takes a few more steps forward until he's leaning over the edge. So it seems you fell, a fitting death for scum. He sneers. To Luffy's surprise, he leans over to collect something off the ground. He picks it up, and with a glance down, Luffy's breath stops altogether. Admiral Akainu walks off and takes Luffy's dismembered arm with him. Luffy barely registers that it's his arm that the Admiral is carrying and only stares at his stump in shock. With weak legs and a weak mind, he forces himself to a standing position. After wavering dangerously to the side, he gets a hold of himself and numbly climbs down the ledge to the beach. Step by agonizing step, he walks around the beach until he spots a small rowboat sitting up on the sand. Luffy drags his legs to the floating device and is barely able to push it into the water. He quickly jumps on the boat with a groan and rips off part of his shirt, tying it around his bleeding shoulder. Exhausted and extremely lightheaded, he lays down on his back, preparing for his death. Tears run down Luffy's face, and he cries to the world as the flames sprout from his home and into the sky. Wanda shrieks in horror as the arm is dropped in front of her and the rest of her cellmates. She reaches blindly for Makino and buries her face in her shoulder. Is T that? Magra stutters, eyes blown wide, and Makino cries in horror. That is what he deserves for being the brother of Fire Fist Ace. Pure monster through and through. Akainu states calmly, eyes unblinking. But to his surprise, they all stand and radiate pure anger at him. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with this system? One person shouts, tears streaming down their face. Who cares who he's related to? What a pirate has done doesn't mean that he bears the same sins. You killed an innocent boy. Luffy was the sweetest kid. The Admiral looks on in curiosity, but if he felt any guilt, he didn't show it. In a marine base far away, an old marine sits in the center of a dark office. The air is heavy, and the only noise comes from the occasional quiet crunching. Said marine, also known as Vice Admiral Garp the Fist, grabs another cracker and munches on it slowly. Damn it, he curses quietly, gripping his hands into fists. Garp knows what is happening to his hometown. The destruction, the capturing, and yet there's not a single thing he can do because the celestial dragons are responsible. It's at times like these where he really hates who the Marines serve. He continues to lament when a call on his emergency Den Mushy interrupts his thoughts. He knows who this is. This phone was made specifically for them. He places it delicately in front of him, then lets it ring. A bit reluctantly, he answers, and immediately there's a reply. Gramps, it's Luffy. All his instincts are to reply, but he keeps his mouth shut. The celestial whatevers took control of the town and made us all slaves. They burned everything down, Gramps. Even the party bar. The sadness in his voice almost makes Garp choke up. ... and I need help. So please, Gramps. He can't talk to him. What would he say? That this is justice. Gramps, are you there? Garp can hear the disappointment in his voice. It's silence after that, only small scuffling, and he thinks Luffy is trying to get his bearings. Please, I don't know what to do. It's all my fault. They wanted me, but they took the whole town, and I'm not strong enough to stop them cause I'm a damn kid. Garp can hear the tears at this point. Ace isn't here and I don't know what to do. I need help, so please just answer. Anything, please. The silence is now echoing with silent sobs from the snail phone. It's utterly heartbreaking, and Garp is biting his lip, tears streaming down his face. Damn it. After the soft curse, the call ends and Garp hangs his head low. Luffy, Ace, I'm so sorry. He apologizes to thin air, knowing he can't face his grandsons anymore. Sorry, friends. I knew I would make mistakes about two hands when he only has one in this. I hope I fixed all the mistakes. Sorry. Thanks who understand, and let's start now. When Luffy blinks his eyes open to a blinding light, he certainly wasn't expecting to hear seagulls cawing in the background. Luffy flicks his eyes around uncertainly, but the crashing waves against wood make him realize he's on a boat. Feeling weak, he turns his head to the side from his laying position, hoping to lessen the sun's intensity. Luffy glances down at his stump and is surprised to see bandages all over it. Who did this? He wonders. Whoever it was, they probably saved his life. A quick look to his other arm makes him sigh. The energy-sapping cuff is still on his wrist. Oh right, I'm still on the boat I left on. Luffy thinks dazedly. He observes the blood-caked boat in confusion. How could someone treat him in the middle of the ocean? So I drifted to an island then. Wait, did I not leave Dawn Island? Ignoring the pain, he shoots up to a sitting position and looks around the island in a panic. He sighs in relief when he realizes this island is different. This isn't it. I must have drifted a while then. Thank Oda. As he stumbles out of the boat, Luffy realizes the full extent of his hunger from days of travel and the minimal portions he received as a slave. He misses the perfect way Ace cooks a boar and Makino's special steaks. Suddenly, Luffy throws his good hand on top of his head. A relieved sigh escapes his lips when he feels the comforting, crunchy straw of his hat. A grumbling in his stomach makes him groan. The only thing on his mind is food as he walks along the beach clutching his arm. The blood is already soaking through the bandages and is lightly staining his hand. After trudging in the hot sun for an hour, he sees a shabby-looking town in the distance. Palm trees and heavy forests surround it, making the buildings seem darker. Their port is the only thing that looks fine quality, with the vast amount of ships and the many bustling merchants. Hey Brett, used to being addressed by the nickname. Luffy instinctively turns his head only to be met with broad chests and blades. Wide-eyed, he looks up and meets the stare of three rather intimidating men with cruel grins. They chuckle mockingly and Luffy gulps. "Whatcha doing, kid? Lost your mommy?" one asks, putting on a fake sympathetic expression. "You know, shorty, we'll take you home if your parents give us a little compensation." Another with a scruffy beard offers, rotten breath wafting on Luffy's face. Coughing loudly, Luffy scrunches his face in disgust and waves a hand in front of his nose. "Use a toothbrush, ugly Asen, you reek," Luffy says disdainfully. The scruffy bandit grits his teeth and points the sword to Luffy's neck. "You little shit, do you not know who you're talking to?" he threatens. The others step a little closer to Luffy. "Let's get to the chase. Give us your money, kid, or we will kill you right here," the one with a bandana says, flicking a tongue over his teeth. Luffy wants no more than to beat these bastards into oblivion and to show them that even though he's a kid, he can pack one hell of a punch. Unfortunately, he has his arm to think about and his stupid shackle. Along with the loss of blood weakening him, he doesn't have his gum powers to soften their blows. So all in all, he can't fight. "I don't have any money," he informs them, slowly shying away. But the bandits don't let him take another step and surround him in a tight circle. "Your parents are bound to have some then, and I think for your best interest you hand over the cash," the scruffy one says menacingly. Yeah, the first one joins in. "Especially with your," he nods to Luffy's stump, "handicap." On a split-second decision, Luffy ducks through the bandana-wearing bandit's legs and makes a break for the town. Just as he gets a few steps in, his foot trips on a rock and he falls on his stomach. Crap. He flips around to a sitting position, but they are already standing above him with their long shadows casting down on his small figure ominously. "Boy, is that a sea stone bracelet?" the scruffy one asks his companions. "That's right, I think it is. You must be one of those rare devil fruit users. Say boys, if this kid is a runaway slave, we can get a hefty reward if we return him," the scruffy bandit suggests, rubbing his chin in thought. That was all Luffy needed to hear, and he takes off running faster than ever before. "Boy, where do you think you're going?" The bandits chase behind him, but quickly get lost in the thick forest Luffy ran into. Where'd he go? He's too far in the woods to catch now. Let's find easier prey. Luffy can still hear the bandits' voices, so he runs faster, crashing through the undergrowth without stopping. After running for what feels like hours, Luffy stops in a sunlit clearing, looking around for any signs of danger. "Looks like they left me alone." Deeming it safe, Luffy sinks against a tree trying to catch his breath. He's utterly exhausted from hunger and blood loss, so he takes a while to recuperate. Even when his breathing returns to normal, he can't think straight with his stomach on empty. "I need to hunt," he decides. Slowly but surely, he pushes himself up and looks around for a weapon. Luffy says triumphantly. He trots over to a bush that has shed all its leaves. The branches are long and pointy, perfect for stabbing prey. With a sharp tug, Luffy pulls a branch off the shrub and stumbles a little at the momentum. He brings the pointy end up to his face and examines it. "Seems okay," he mumbles as his childish face scrutinizes the weapon. "Now for the food." He grips the branch much like he would his pipe and walks further into the forest. Suddenly a small growling noise catches his attention and he gets into a defensive stance, ready to fend off the beast. The noise returns, louder this time, and Luffy twists his head looking for the creature, but it's nowhere in sight. Where the hell is it? The rustling of bushes to his right makes Luffy stiffen. He braces himself for a boar, tiger, bear, and rabbit. The small creature hops out from the undergrowth into the clearing to nibble on a fresh patch of grass. Luffy scolds himself for being so worked up over such a tiny thing when he hears the growling again. A light blush spreads over his cheeks. Oops, that ferocious beast was my stomach. But Luffy can't contain the drool that pools around his mouth as he looks at the small mammal. It's small, but it'll do. Sticking his tongue out in concentration, he tiptoes towards the rabbit. Careful not to make any noise, he raises his spear in preparation to strike. Gotcha. Luffy thinks his aim is spot on. but the stick lands on the space right next to the rabbit. Alert to the danger, the rabbit escapes into the bushes at a furious pace. Damn it, he shouts out loud. Why is his aim off? He usually hunts with ease. Getting frustrated, Luffy approaches the nearest tree and concentrates on a specific point. Come on. He drives the stick forward, but it in fact misses the tree completely. With another angry growl, Luffy attacks the tree again and again, but unfortunately can't get a single clean hit. Is it because my arm is gone? He glares at his stump and grits his teeth. Great, one more thing he can't do. Tossing the stick into some nearby bushes, Luffy walks in the direction of where he thinks the town. I ran from that direction, so it must be over ... here. He perks up slightly when he sees the brick wall of a building a little way in front of him. The thought of food being close by makes Luffy speed up his pace, and soon enough he's in an alleyway, peeking at the town. The state of the village is as shabby on the inside as it looks from the outside. Everything seems to be gray, and all of the people look harsh and cruel. Not wanting to encounter them, Luffy remains where he is and looks at the line of stalls set up along the road. The products are full of variety, ranging from sakes of the East Blue to silks from the North Blue. Hey mommy, why does he have one arm? The mother flicks her scornful eyes to Luffy, then back to her child. I don't know, honey, but I hope he goes back to wherever he came from. The mother grabs her child's hand and pulls her along the street without a second glance. A troubled expression takes over Luffy's features, and he lifts his stump half-heartedly. Is he really that different? Scanning the booths in front of him, Luffy sees a black cloak with a hood hanging off the side. I need that. This arm makes me too noticeable, he thinks, frustrated. Luffy waits until the vendor isn't looking, then snatches the cloak off the rack. He quickly runs back to the forest, not risking a fight. Taking a moment to straighten out the fabric, Luffy slips the cloak on and silently thanks whatever deity that tied the neck ribbon beforehand. He looks down to examine his appearance. The cloak covers his whole upper body and torso all the way down until just above his knee. Luffy pushes his straw hat under the cloak and pulls the hood up a bit so the straw hat is carefully hidden around his neck. If I walk out like this, the vendor guy will know I stole it. Making it look a little more worn, Luffy tears and pats dirt all over the cloak. Deeming himself ready to go into town, he walks far away from the vendor he stole from and enters the main street from an alley further down. As he walks deeper and deeper into the city, Luffy discovers how similar it is to Low Town. The only difference is that there are more people and they are less friendly. The citizens that walk by give him different looks of hate, hunger, and scorn. However, Luffy hardly acknowledges them as he is fixated on looking for a decent restaurant to dine and dash. Problem is, every time he looks into a restaurant, it is filled with pirates or bandits who can easily kill him if he takes one step inside. The hunger is strong now, though. To Luffy, it feels like there is a hole in his stomach, and if he doesn't get something soon, he's going to faint. Desperate, Luffy prepares himself to run headfirst into a particularly sketchy bar when a sweet tune from down the street floats to his ears. It is the only thing that isn't gloomy in this gray town, and momentarily distracted, Luffy hurries to its source. He loves music. The bar. His mind chirps. Luffy stops in front of the seemingly ordinary tavern. It reminds him somewhat of the party bar. He realizes with an ache. The angelic voice coming from inside draws Luffy to the establishment. He pushes open the swinging doors cautiously and observes the drunkards around him, all chugging sake and gorging on food. A smoking turkey leg on the table next to him causes Luffy's mouth to water. He makes a move to snatch it from the oblivious customer, but the voice reaches his ears again. He turns toward a young man standing on a stage at the corner of the bar. The beautiful song he is singing causes some of the men nearby to stop their chatter and stare silently. Luffy steps towards the man and watches in awe of his talent. There isn't any money being collected as Luffy expects. The man appears to be singing for nothing at all, just purely for the entertainment of others. When the song finishes, the whole bar breaks out into applause. The young man smiles softly, bowing, and then takes his leave. Luffy's eyes follow him to where he sits at the bar and a steak is placed in front of him. As promised, a good steak for a good show, the barman says amusedly. The singer chuckles and cuts a piece of steak. Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure, he says as he twirls his fork. He got that for free. Luffy thinks in disbelief, but the steaming steak has him distracted and he zones in on it. A sudden hand on his shoulder has him whirling around to a hairy man in an apron. A waiter. Luffy thinks to himself. Who are you, kid? You aren't old enough to be in here. He eyes Luffy up and down. Plus you're looking pretty sickly. You better not be a beggar. Luffy doesn't answer immediately and the man's expression turns dark. The bar suddenly goes silent, but it is unnoticed by the pair. The barman and singer watch on intently. I don't stand for beggars in this bar. You're leaving now. The waiter grabs Luffy's hood and drags him out the tavern where he is tossed to the ground. Luffy throws one more longing look at the steak before the doors close off his view. He remains laying on the street side, breathing heavily. Luffy's energy is slipping away and he can feel it go fast. Desperate, he pulls out the last idea he has, with a little more effort than necessary. He gets up and runs deep into town searching for something. His eyes light up when he sees a steady flow of people coming to and from a fancy clothing store. Digging into his hood, Luffy pulls out his prized straw hat and runs next to the entrance of the business. Placing his hat neatly on the ground in front of him, he searches his mind for a song. He remembers vaguely Ace and Sabo telling him he had a great singing voice. He misses them so much it physically hurts him. I've got to try this. That guy got a free meal because he sang, so I can do it too. He thinks determinedly, trying to push the pain away. I know, I'll sing the one the fishermen always sing by the dock. He decides. Taking a deep breath, Luffy thinks over the lyrics and begins to sing. He closes his eyes and allows the words to flow through his mouth. The world seems to blur from him as he concentrates on the song. Luffy lets his mind roam across the events that led to his slavery and he channels his emotions into the song. He finishes the song on a low note and slowly opens his eyes to see a single man across the street slowly applauding him. Luffy blushes in embarrassment and realizes he's seen this person before. It's the singer guy from the bar. The man walks until he is standing right in front of him. Luffy notes that his head reaches just below the singer's shoulders. Not breaking eye contact with Luffy, he bends down and picks Luffy's hat up off the ground. Much to the rubber boy's dismay, the man smiles at Luffy's expression and lightly pushes the hat into Luffy's hand. Did you get the idea from me? He asks, still smiling. Luffy just nods and looks down at his hat. His eyes widen in excitement when he sees 20 billies in coins. He never had his own money before. Sure, there was the pirate fund, but he was sharing that with Ace and Sabo. Don't feel bad about the small amount. That's actually pretty good considering the people here aren't too generous, he says sympathetically, mistaking Luffy's silence for disappointment. By the way, great voice. You're a natural at singing. Then the man pulls something out of his pocket that almost makes Luffy go rabid. Cookies, Luffy murmurs, gaze fixed on the treats as they are pushed in his hands. Quickly remembering his manner lessons, Luffy bows deeply. Thank you so much, he says gratefully. Luffy stands up straight and bounces up and down in excitement. The singer chuckles amusedly, then notices Luffy's arm under the cloak. You have no arm. Luffy gasps and wraps the cloak closed with his good hand. He stares at the man intently, daring him to make a move. But the man surprises Luffy by reaching into his back pocket searching for something. How old are you, kid? He asks, relaxing slightly. Luffy loosens his grip on the cloak. 14. Really? He looks younger cause he's kinda short. Plus he looks a little gauntly and ill. The singer makes a sound of satisfaction when he feels something in his pocket. He pulls out a couple of bills and places it in Luffy's hat. How much is that? Luffy asks, bewildered. 50 billies on the nose. That should be enough to get some food and medicine for yourself. Luffy gasps and shakes his head. But you need this money too, right? That's why you sing, to get food and stuff. You need it more than me, kid. The man sighs at Luffy's semi-confused look. That arm isn't looking too good and neither do you. I can always earn it easily. Plus, I'm not as poor as you think, he says with a wink. Luffy glances at the folks around him that are giving them glares for hanging around a fancy shop. Why would someone from this town help me? He asks the man. Chuckling, the singer turns his back to Luffy. Us singers got to stick together. Luffy shakes his head and grins widely. I'm not a singer, I'm going to be a pirate. The man only laughs harder as he walks away into the foggy street. Wait, Luffy yells. What's your name? Not pausing, the man raises his hand in farewell. Luffy notices some sort of symbol tattooed on his arm. You can call me. What? Luffy asks again, not hearing the name. But he's already gone. Oh well, Luffy shrugs. Suddenly, his head gets dizzy and spots are dancing around in his vision. So hungry, he thinks weakly. Ducking into the alleyway behind him, he sinks against the wall and pulls the packaging off the cookies with his teeth. Luffy doesn't waste any time gorging into the cookies. It feels like forever. Tears trail down his face as he munches on the treats. It is his first meal in a long time. He leaves no time to savor and eats only to null the pain in his stomach. When he finishes, he wipes the tears from his eyes and licks his fingers of crumbs. I need to eat more first. Then go see a doctor, I think. That guy said I should. Luffy resolves, licking the final finger clean. With that, he shoves all his money in his disheveled pocket and tucks his straw hat back in his hood. Stealthily walking out of the alleyway and down the street, Luffy comes upon a restaurant far from the one he tried to steal from. This one seems okay. He pushes the door open to the tavern and the smell of alcohol invades his nostrils. Holding in a cough at the intense odor, he looks around for an empty table. Luffy exclaims mentally when he finds one. Dodging and ducking the boisterous customers, he makes his way to the far corner of the bar where there is a solitary table. Luffy plops down in the creaky wooden seat and places his hand on a table. As he waits for service, his gaze travels around the room and takes in all the activity. Pirates and working men alike are all drinking to their heart's content. The waitresses are scampering around like mice with trays balanced in their arms, rushing to give them their orders. Luffy feels a frown crawl on his face. He wants to get Foosha Village back to the way it was, so they can have fun like this. But how does he find Ace? Luffy looks up to a waitress reluctantly approaching him. Her head is turned to the side and she's gripping her tray to her stomach. Well, look, I've never done this before, but it's clear you're not going to pay for your meal, and my boss says beggars aren't allowed here. So just go back to your parents or something, she says uncomfortably, scrunching his face in focus. Luffy sticks his hand in his pocket and lights up when he pulls the cash out. Actually, I do have money, miss, he says proudly. Taken aback, she coughs and fumbles for her notepad. Okay then. What will you have? She asks hesitantly, still suspicious. I'll have the biggest piece of meat you have, Luffy says while drooling a waterfall. That would be the steak. I'll be right back with your order. A few short minutes later, a steaming steak is placed in front of Luffy. Thank you for the meal, he says appreciatively. Not wasting another second, he hounds on the steak, surprising a few passersby. A sudden turn in his stomach makes him stop eating. The nausea comes full force and he clutches his stomach in fear of throwing up. What? Why would food make me sick? Food is never bad, Luffy argues mentally. So when the sickness fades away, he takes an experimental taste to see if the pain returns. Relieved he still feels alright, he eats his steak slowly so he can keep it down. To be honest with himself, the meat was a little rich compared to what he's eaten for a while. When he finishes, he feels satisfied and warm inside. Luffy sees his waitress and hails her down with his good arm. She walks stiffly towards him and smiles forcibly. Did you enjoy your meal, sir? She asks stiffly, oblivious to her uneasiness. He nods his head enthusiastically. You bet. Oh, waitress lady, can I get some bread to go? Of course, just give me a moment. She walks away to the kitchen. Luffy figures if he got some food for later, it'll come in handy when he gets hungry again. And he will get hungry again. Here you go. Luffy takes the pouch of bread from her hand and tucks it away in his other pocket. How much is everything? Luffy asks. He should have known that before he ate. The waitress thinks, disgruntled. 30 bullies, she says curtly, keeping her real emotions inside. Luffy fumbles around the bills until he comes up with the amount. Here you go, miss. Bye. He grins widely and waves to her until he exits the restaurant. She merely brings a hand up in farewell and watches him leave. Luffy steps out into the summer air feeling a little better, but now that the pang in his stomach is gone, the harsh pain of his shoulder is more noticeable. In a quick check, he realizes there is blood soaking the side of his shirt and staining his chest. Luffy inspects the bandage, which is now completely red with blood, and hides it under the cloak. I hope I see that mystery doctor again. He'll know what to do about my arm. Maybe I can find where he works. Luffy walks through the murky streets looking for any sign of a doctor's office. But nothing jumps out at him. Aren't all doctors supposed to have red crosses on their doors or something? He wonders aloud. A young lady walks by with a shopping bag in hand. Luffy trots up and walks alongside her. Excuse me, Luffy asks innocently. The lady turns to meet his gaze and lifts an eyebrow because a scruffy-looking kid is talking to her. What is it? She snaps, irritated. Do you know where I can find a doctor's office? Not noticing her harsh tone, he looks at her expectantly. She sticks a thumb over her shoulder to a building a few paces away. No office here, kid. Go to the pharmacy. Speeding up, she walks away and leaves Luffy all alone. Pharmacy, he tries to pronounce, but the name is familiar to him. Luffy remembers Makino bringing some bandages back from that place for Ace, Sabo, and him. The smell of herbs is strong as he walks into the wooden building. The shelves are stacked high with different medicine and bandages. Luffy checks around the shelves, but is completely clueless. I thought I only needed bandages, but the singer guy said I needed other medicine. Which one do I use? He reads the labels, but there's only a bunch of medical garble that he doesn't understand. Oops, Luffy accidentally knocks a bottle off the shelf and it hits the floor with a smash. Who broke that? Someone yelled. Probably a clerk. Crap. Luffy speed walks into an aisle far away from the scene. He peeks around the corner and sees a few angry people dressed in white cleaning it up. Sighing in relief, he swings back around to the new area. Hey, there's the Red Cross, Luffy exclaims mentally. Up ahead is a separate section off the store with the Red Cross plastered up above the entrance. Approaching the area, he notices that there are only a few people, ratty ones at that, who are sitting on opposite sides of the waiting room. At the back is a large wooden desk with a grumpy-looking clerk writing something down. Going through the room, Luffy could feel the sickness radiating off of the waiting people. Glancing down at his own pale and skinny form, he figures he's not doing much better. As Luffy steps up to the desk, he frowns. It's too tall, only half of his head is peeking out. The lady behind the desk takes no notice. She's now flipping through a magazine. Placing his hand flat on the counter, he stands up on his tiptoes so his head is fully visible. Ugh, the sudden movement makes him sway and his shoulder throb painfully. He's feeling pretty weak again, but the lady still doesn't budge. Maybe I do need more than just bandages, Luffy thinks sheepishly. Once he straightens himself out, he clears his throat loudly. When the lady still doesn't look up, he coughs even louder. After a few seconds, she closes her eyes and sighs. The lady lifts one eye open and frowns a bit deeper as she looks at Luffy. What do you want, kid? She finally relents. I need medicine, he says bluntly. She grumbles to herself but takes out the largest book Luffy's ever seen. Dropping it on the desk with a bang that makes others jump, she opens it up to a random page. Name. Oh, Luffy. What's the medicine you need? She sighs. Luffy taps his chin in thought. Well, I don't know much of anything about medicine. The really nice singer guy said I should get it, but I thought I only needed bandages. Oh, and gauze, Luffy adds in, recalling his brothers using it on his wounds. She furrows her brows and crosses her arms on her chest. Just out of curiosity, is this stuff for you? She asks. He nods his head eagerly, a bright oblivious smile on his face. Can I see the injury? With small hesitation, he steps back so she can see his full body. Luffy reaches down and shyly lifts his cloak to expose his missing arm. She gasps in shock and he drops the cloak, startled. This is serious. You're bleeding much too heavily. She runs around the desk and touches the bloodied bandage on his shoulder. You need to get stitches, she says urgently, gently taking his good arm and leading him in a back room. I don't think I have enough money for that. I only have 40 billies, he says, warning her before she did anything he couldn't afford. But she ignores him and leads him to an empty doctor's office where she sits him down. Luffy merely looks at her curiously while she shifts through drawers. What are you looking for? He asks, but she's pushing his chest gently, willing him to lay down. Lay still, I need to take off your bandages. He complies with her requests, and she gently removes the cloak. Luffy watches as she cringes at the blood-soaked clothes. With more care than he thought, she strips him down to his boxers and unravels the bandage. After she sends a frown at the bangle on his wrist, she dips a cloth in water and gently cleans him of any dry blood around his arm and side. I'll wash and fix your clothes later, she says as she taps a needle. Luffy is still looking confused, so she smirks. I'm just a trainee doctor, but I'm perfectly capable of stitches. She sticks the needle in his good arm, and that's when he notices how young she looks. This is just a sedative. Just relax and I'll stitch you right up, she says, reaching for string. But he's already out. There's a light buzz when Luffy comes to. He blinks open his eyes to a white ceiling. Where am I? He wonders. Luffy sits up slowly and looks around the strange room. His gaze wanders down to his stitched stub, and that's when it all comes back to him. Escaping. His arm. The singer. The doctor. Flopping back down on the cot, he sighs deeply. I need to find Ace, but where is he right now? He thinks harder and his face is turning red. The newspaper said he joined the White Mustache Pirates, right? Or was it the White-Eared Pirates? Maybe I can ask the doctor lady. Luffy lays silent for a moment, then groans with his hand flying to his face. How am I supposed to meet him? I can't steal a boat. That'll take too long and I'm in a hurry. At that moment, the trainee enters with food, interrupting Luffy's mental turmoil. You need to eat something. Even a blind old man would be able to tell you have malnutrition. She swings a tray over his lap and places a steaming bowl of soup in front of him. Luffy gasps in joy and brings the bowl up to his lips, taking a long sip. When he finishes, he brings it back down and sighs in relief. Luffy looks at her back while she's writing stuff down facing the opposite way. Lady, it's Alice. Sorry. The silence drags on before he opens his mouth again. Alice, why are you helping me? She snorts and turns to look at him. I couldn't just leave you out there with no treatment after you lost a damn arm. You probably would have died. No one is too kind in this town. Luffy shakes his head childishly, making Alice giggle. This kid is too cute. Not all of them. There was the singer guy who gave me food and the mystery person who wrapped my arm while I was passed out. He insists. Alice smiles tight-lipped. That's probably the doctor here. He usually can't leave someone alone who needs treatment. What a nice guy, Luffy exclaims, grinning widely. He's quite rude, actually. If you saw him again, he would demand money for his services and rip the stitches out if you couldn't pay. Luffy shivers and grips his injured shoulder. Alice walks over to a cabinet and pulls out Luffy's clothes. They're all clean and blood-free. I'm sorry for being rude earlier. I never get customers with serious issues. They usually all just complain about the small things, she confesses, handing the clothes to Luffy. He stands up carefully and begins dressing himself. Why is everyone in this town mean? He asks bluntly. Well, this town in fact is only made up of descendants of pirates. Luffy's eyes sparkle. It seems we've all inherited their nature. We've got to be tough to get what we want right, she says with a wink. He hums in understanding as he pulls the cloak over his shoulders. Unfortunately, the neck ribbon is undone, so he tries to tie it with one hand. Here, Alice kneels down and ties the ribbon for him. I'm sorry, the sea stone cuff is still on you. I tried to get it off, but that thing is incredibly hard to break. Luffy lifts a hand and examines the gray bangle. What is sea stone? Some bandits mentioned it before. Well, it's a special kind of stone that causes devil fruit users to become weak and lose their ability. Since you have one, I assume you have powers yourself, she asks, pulling the ribbon tight. That's right, I'm a rubber man. I can stretch really far. See, he grabs his cheek and pulls, but it remains taut. He lets go and rubs his pain cheek. Ouch, I forgot. Kishishi. She shakes her head slowly, but there's a soft smile playing her lips. Alice stands up straight and reaches for a small white bag on the counter. Since the cuff is making you weaker than usual, you're more susceptible to infection. She shoves the bag in Luffy's hands and pulls out a notebook. Grabbing the pen behind her ear, she scribbles down notes. There's all the medicine you will need in that bag, so don't lose it. And here she hands Luffy the paper as a list of the ones you need to keep you going. Luffy peeks in the bag at the small bottles of liquid mystery medicine. He mumbles, then closes the bag, his reasoning over money completely discarded. Thank you so much. You're the best, Alice. Hey, when I make a pirate crew, can you be my doctor? Luffy asks, bouncing on the spot. She opens her mouth, but all that comes out is a laugh. I am sorry, Luffy. She struggles to contain her giggles. But a pirate's life is not a life for me. I'm happy here. Luffy scowls and turns his head away. Damn it, you would have been perfect, he complains. Alice chuckles again and ruffles his hair. I'm sure your perfect doctor is someone else out there. You just have to wait. Straightening his straw hat on his neck, Luffy grins widely. You bet. Thanks for everything, Alice. See ya. Don't you want to stay and recover? Alice asks, crossing her arms. Luffy shakes his head. I can't. I have something really important I need to do, he says. Suddenly, Luffy lifts a finger in the air. Right. I forgot to ask. Do you know how I could talk to the white mustache pirates? He asks. Alice's face scrunches in confusion. Do you mean the Whitebeard pirates? Oh right. That's it, he exclaims, pointing to her. I need to see them. It's an emergency. What? Are you insane? Not only are we taking about the strongest man in the world, but they are deep in the Grand Line, the most dangerous place in the seas. Luffy opens his mouth to say something, but she cuts him off with a raised hand. But if you really want to do this, then you should go to the nearest island that is Whitebeard protected. If you find some pirates, there they have to be allied with him and they might let you contact him. Where's the nearest island? Luffy asks. Teller Island in the West Blue. You're lucky to be on this island. We have ships going everywhere around the blues. You're bound to find a merchant ship heading that way. Luffy runs up and hugs her around the waist. Alice only blinks down in bewilderment, speechless. Thank you so much, Alice. You helped me so much. He releases her and smiles widely, running out the door. Bye, Luffy yells, waving. Alice stands there paralyzed, but then she catches herself and smiles softly at him. Good luck, Luffy, she shouts, ignoring the glares of the patients around her. Luffy waves until he's out of the store and immediately sprints in the direction of the port. When he arrives, he hides behind a stack of crates. Boy, hurry it up. This shipment is bound for the West Blue, and we're already behind schedule. Luffy watches carefully as the burly men stack the remainder of their barrels on their moderate-sized ship. Set sail, one yells, and Luffy knows he has to hurry. Looking side to side, he makes sure the coast is clear before sprinting full force to the departing vessel. Last minute, he dives on the deck and squeezes amongst the many barrels on deck. Did you guys hear something? One of the crew members asks. Luffy holds his breath as they walk around the deck. You're imagining it, Larry. You've had a couple too many drinks. No, I didn't. Luffy sinks in relief as they argue back and forth. He shifts until he is propped up comfortably against a barrel. He rests his hand on his stomach and gazes at the setting sun, letting the waves and gentle rocking lull him into a daze. Friends, I'm sorry for the two-hand errors occur here too. I always forget he has one arm. I'm so embarrassed. Things are going all right for Luffy. To get to Teller Island, he's had to hide out on two different merchant ships. The first has taken him to some random island that has a weird obsession with umbrellas, but the second is going to his destination. The current merchant ship he's on sells fish, which makes it entirely annoying when Luffy gets smacked in the face by a flailing tail. Luckily, that only happened a few times when the ship hit some rough waters and the fish spilled out of the barrels. Luffy leans over and sniffs his shirt. He hopes it doesn't smell too fishy, but he's stuck on the ship until they dock at Teller Island. Until then, he has to put up with the smell. Food-wise, Luffy is okay. He has eaten the bread pouch he has kept in his pocket. Unfortunately, he accidentally dropped all his money in the ocean when a massive wave hit the boat. So that's a bummer. Alice said on the directions that he needs to take a swig from each of the bottles and replace the bandages every night before he goes to sleep. Luffy can't say he's fond of that though. The medicine tastes like tree leaves. Bleck. Currently, Luffy is napping under the tarp at the bow of the Red Snapper. It's been relatively calm seas for the last bit, but Luffy still feels restless. The nap is hardly doing anything for his nerves. As soon as this ship docks, he has a chance to talk to Ace. The people in Foosha are depending on him. A sudden jolt of the boat makes Luffy fall off the bench he's been dozing on. He lands on the wooden deck with an audible thump. Oh, he cringes and rubs his aching nose. Sorry boys, didn't think the dock was that close. Larry, what did we tell you about drinking on the job? I haven't drank a single drop of alcohol. While the merchants argue with Larry for the millionth time that day, Luffy adjusts his straw hat securely around his neck from where it was jostled in the fall. Shishishi, don't want anything to happen to you out there. I'm lucky I got to keep you when we all got captured. Luffy muses, patting his hat fondly, now that the voices are edging further and further away. He lifts up the front of the tarp. Luffy blinks his eyes at the harsh sunlight. Once his eyes adjust, he peeks outside. The first thing that comes into view is a grand sign that says in large letters, "Welcome to Teller Island." Luffy's heart thuds in his chest and his hand starts to sweat in anticipation. This is it, he thinks anxiously. Looking around further, there are plenty of creaky old docks and boasting fishermen, but a large flag waving proudly in the air catches his eye. The Whitebeard Jolly Roger. He mumbles, breathless. It is situated in what appears to be the center of the town. The flag is the tallest thing in town, easily spotted to ward off any enemy pirates. Take these boxes to the Fox Tavern. But please, Larry, don't stop to drink too much. Luffy can see the crew talking at the corner of his vision. I don't even like alcohol. Everyone sighs in unison. Luffy can see two of the other merchants leading a flustered Larry away. Don't lie to yourself, Larry. We'll go with you to keep you away from temptation. One of them smacks Larry's back, making him fumble to keep a hold of the heavy crates. Luffy listens to Larry mumble curses, and soon they are out of sight. He looks over to the 3 crew members remaining, happy to see them distracted. Luffy waits a little longer for clearance, then slinks out of the tarp and onto the dock. He immediately jogs into the crowd and blends in with the rivers of people. This town is much nicer than the last 2 he visited. It is vibrant with different arrays of colorful flowers. The economy is clearly prosperous with their plentiful population, and there isn't a hint of a frown anywhere. It's a great place, one where everyone wants to be. But this isn't where Luffy wants to be. He wants to be with the Whitebeard pirates, with Ace. He looks around the docks for any pirate ships. Luffy remembers Alice saying that only pirates who have the okay from Whitebeard are allowed on the island. So Luffy walks along the port until he sees a large brown pirate ship. Despite the pirates' alliance with Whitebeard, people are still shying away from the men. Luffy looks up to the flag waving from their crow's nest. The Jolly Roger has an image of a skull with long claws coming out of the sides. He smiles in triumph and immediately approaches the massive ship. He silently marvels the vessel and has a strange urge to sit on the tiger figurehead. The pirate crew is coming on and off of the ship, carrying loads of supplies and wooden barrels onto the deck. The only real pirate ship Luffy's seen before this was Shanks's. Even Blue Gem didn't have his own ship. The whole crew looks similar to Blue Gem's. But this one has to be better. They're friends with Ace. While Luffy is standing still conversing with himself, the pirates have to veer to avoid him while they carry their large loads. Damn brat, beat a kid, you're in the way. The pirates mutter curses and insults under their breaths. Ignoring them, Luffy looks around for someone who seems important. That's when his eyes land on a tall man with the scruffiest black beard he's ever seen. He walks to the pirate's side but is not noticed because of the particularly heavy crate the man is carrying. Oi, oi, Luffy bugs, tugging on the pirate's sleeve. The man's face is beet red from the weight, and Luffy's pestering isn't helping. Not now, kid. I'm busy, he yells in Luffy's face. But Luffy is undeterred. Where's your captain? He asks, persistent. The pirate pushes past Luffy and snorts. Don't provoke pirates, kid, he shouts. Go back to your mommy and bother someone else. Then he walks away to his ship. Luffy grumbles and puffs his cheeks out in annoyance. He's being called a kid a lot lately. He turns his attention instead to a pirate with large claws and a large hat. The claw man waves his hands in dramatic gestures, gathering the attention of the crew. They all crowd around him eagerly and eat up every word he says. Now my crew, get back to work, he says in a deep, scratchy voice. The crew salutes. Aye, aye, sir. They all chant, then split up to their respectful tasks. The man and a few other strong-looking crew members remain behind. They start talking loudly and non-caring. We'll be all stocked up with this haul. The burly one says, arms crossed. Good, I'm expecting rough seas. Last thing we need is to run into marines without any cannons, says the claw hand one. The sneer never seems to leave his face. You're so strong, Captain, you could beat them without any cannons, says a skinny one at the captain's side. Luffy's ears perk up. You got that right. I could take them all down with only my pinky finger. Biwahaha, eh what? The captain's laughter is cut short as Luffy jumps in front of him. Who do you want, brat? The captain asks. He's a little mad he was caught off guard. Luffy stands on his tippy toes to get as close to his face as possible. You're the captain, right? Do you know the Whitebeard pirates? He asks eagerly. The captain suddenly looks smug, happy to see someone marvel at him. He flexes his large claws so that they gleam in the sunlight. That's right, kid, he boasts. I talked to the Yonko Whitebeard himself. The man bows down to my strength every time he sees me. Luffy's smile widens and his eyes light up. That's great. Do you know Ace too? Fire Fist Ace. I've heard that he is one of the commanders, but I don't know him personally. Luffy deflates a little, but it is brief. If you know Whitebeard, you can call him right. I need to talk to Ace right away. What Luffy isn't expecting is laughter, but that's what's happening right in his face. The captain and his cronies can barely contain themselves. They're clutching their stomachs, fighting for breath. The captain wipes a stray tear from his eye with a large claw. It's cute you're a fan and all, but you shouldn't mess around in pirate business. We don't stand for jokes. It's not a joke. This is an emergency. Ace is my broth, but they're all laughing in his face again. Not hearing a word he says. Dream on, kid. And they walk away to set sail. Luffy is left standing alone. He's shocked and worried. How can Ace have nakama like these? Not knowing what to do, Luffy walks numbly into town. He finds himself walking into a quaint restaurant. The atmosphere is quite nice even though Luffy is gloomy. But he can't help it. The whole time there's been one question ringing in his head. How is he supposed to find Ace now? Luffy plops down in a booth and a waiter immediately comes to serve him. Welcome to our tavern. What would you like to order? This man is cheerful with a definite spring in his step. Luffy scans the menu half-heartedly. Just get me some meat. He pushes the menu back at the waiter. Are you okay? You're looking a little glum. Luffy just shrugs. The waiter's smile falters for a moment, but he brings it back with twice as much force. Don't be down. I don't like that frown. It's a good day. Why do you say? The flowers all bloom. And there's still some room. For a smile too, just for you. He finishes reciting the poem and Luffy stares wide-eyed. The waiter clears his throat awkwardly. How do you like it? I've been working on it for a while. Luffy's open expression melts into a soft smile. I love it. Thank you. His signature grin stretches across his face. The waiter lights up and bows. Well, that's a good sight to see. A frown just doesn't seem right for your face. He scribbles down Luffy's order in his notepad. I'll be right back with your ... meat, I guess. The man walks away and Luffy rests his chin on the table. He was going to dine and dash, but changes his mind. Luffy doesn't want to steal from these people. They seem nice. But he doesn't have enough money. A few minutes later, when Luffy sees his waiter pass by, he waves him over. What's up, kid? He asks when he arrives. Luffy clenches his hand and has a determined expression. I don't have enough money to pay for my meal, he admits. But if you'd let me, I'd like to sing in exchange for my meat. The owner looks taken aback, not expecting this. But he ponders hard about it, rubbing his chin in thought. I completely understand if you want to kick me out of your restaurant, Luffy says, looking down. But the man is shaking his head. No, I'm not going to do that. You're in luck, kid. I'm the owner of this restaurant. I'll give you a shot, as long as you give us a good show. Luffy grins. Thank you. I'm Luffy. What's your name? He asks, extending his hand. The owner grabs it firmly and shakes it vigorously. The name's Tim John Bin, but you can call me Tim. The energy radiating off of this guy is almost on par with a hyper Luffy. Now, Tim continues. We don't have a stage here because we don't book performers, but you can stand on the bar over there. He points to a stained wood bar at the front of the restaurant. Thanks. Luffy grins and jumps up on the bar, immediately grabbing the attention of everyone in the restaurant. Luffy places his straw hat delicately in front of him for tips and thinks of a song to sing. This place is pretty upbeat, so I think I'll do Bink's sake. He starts singing out loud and lets his voice do the job while he wonders about his situation. Based on the jerks he met by the docks, Luffy doesn't think he'll get any more help from pirates. They all think he's some little kid playing around. Finding Whitebeard in person is like finding a fish in the middle of a forest. Almost impossible. What he needs is to get their direct attention. But how can he do that? Luffy finishes his song and the restaurant is silent. Someone drops a coin which is painfully loud in the quiet room. He stands there embarrassed, thinking he did a horrible job. But suddenly someone stands up and claps. Luffy looks on in surprise as the clapping is slow at first, but gradually speeds up as more people join in. Eventually the whole restaurant is on their feet, giving him a standing ovation. Luffy smiles in awe and bows to the audience. One by one the people come forward to place billies in his hat. Once again he bows to them and jumps off of the bar. He immediately pockets the money and hangs his hat across his neck. Saviour, kid. Tim beckons him over to the other side of the bar, holding a large steaming steak in his left hand. Luffy practically skips over to the seat with drool coming from his mouth. He doesn't waste another second attacking the steak, but remembers the hurting in his stomach from before, so Luffy paces himself a little. Your voice is amazing, bud. You deserve that meal for sure, Tim exclaims. Luffy just mumbles his thanks, not really caring, with food stuffed in his mouth. He moves his fork to stab another piece, but the plate tilts a little at the impact. Luffy scowls a little as some of the food rolls off the plate and onto the bar. Why don't you hold the plate with your other hand? You'll have an easier time eating, Tim suggests, grabbing a rag and cleaning off the surface. Luffy silently puts his fork down and pulls his cloak away to expose his stump. As Tim's eyes widen, Luffy hides it again with a wink, and then he's back to eating his heart out. Tim blinks, baffled, but he soon starts laughing in amazement. You're so full of surprises, kid. You can come in my restaurant anytime, Luffy, he says warmly. Luffy gulps down the last of his steak and pushes the spotless plate towards Tim. Thanks for the meal, he says with a grin. Then he's leaving the restaurant, waving goodbye all the while. Luffy walks out to a beautiful sunset reflecting dramatically against the water, taking all his breath away. Or it should have. All it does is remind him of the flames back in Foosha Village. He doesn't linger and turns away into the shadowy forest. Luffy walks about the damp vegetation, leaves and branches crunching underfoot. He turns his head side to side, gazing at the massive trees around him. This one looks good, Luffy says to himself. He is standing under a large oak tree. The branches are jutting out the sides at all angles. The soft leaves are fluttering in the evening breeze. He moves to climb the tree and hops up on the first few branches. Grabbing one with his hand, he swings upward to grab the next with his other hand. Crap. Luffy swings his arm and catches the branch just in time to prevent a very long fall. I've got to get used to having one arm, he tells himself sternly. Adapting, Luffy climbs the rest of the way with practiced ease. This looks like a good spot. Luffy hops up on a thick branch. He sinks to a seating position and relaxes his back against the truck. Aw man, he groans. I've got to drink that gross stuff. Luffy unlatches the bag he keeps attached to his shorts. He sighs as he pulls out the 5 bottles. Luffy flips open the first cap and braces himself for the bitter taste. When only a single drop lands on his tongue, he closes his mouth and grunts in confusion. What the? Luffy flips the small bottle upside down and shakes it, but nothing comes out. He checks each of the others and notices that 2 more are also empty. Well, I was traveling for a while, wasn't I? Alice didn't give me much to start with either, Luffy says mentally. She was probably trying to avoid suspicion from her boss. Luffy pulls out the list she gave him and scrutinizes the names printed on it. SC Sland Yurzits. He struggles to read. Eventually Luffy gives up and stuffs them all back in his bag. He sighs and leans back. Maybe he can cut back on some of them. He couldn't possibly need all of these things. Luffy nods decisively. He doesn't need all that Ikey medicine anymore. The sun is down now, and he can see the first hint of stars appearing in the sky. The breeze is soothing, but Luffy can't fall asleep. He can't stop thinking about the issue at hand. Ace. He needs to figure out how to talk to him or his crew. Giving up is the last thing Luffy wants to do right now. But like it or not, Luffy needs to think hard on this. Why would a big shot like Whitebeard come to a small island like this in the West Blue? If I was a pirate, why would I want to come back? Luffy mumbles to himself. Then an idea shoots through his head. If Whitebeard is protecting this island, that means if it is threatened, then he will come and take care of it. Luffy feels bad because this is Ace's crew, but the situation is too dire to go easy. So how can he cause havoc? Hurting or killing people is out of the question. Not coming up with anything, Luffy tilts his head back to hit the trunk. He closes his eyes and slows his breathing. Damn, what do I do? He thinks exasperatedly. Luffy sighs loudly and lolls his head to the side. In the distance he can still see the Jolly Roger waving proudly in the air. Their flag, Luffy whispers. He can wreck their flag, the one thing showing their claim over the island. But will that be enough? If he did it once, it wouldn't be a #1 priority to them. Plus, time is running out. He needs them to come straight to him. Luffy's head turns red and steamy from thinking so hard. He presses his index finger to his head and forces himself to continue. Destroying one flag isn't a big deal, but if I ruin a bunch of them, they'll need to come find me. He resolves. I need to go down to their protected islands one by one so that they notice me. A cricket chirps somewhere and Luffy frowns. A Jolly Roger is a pirate's pride, and that would be enough to make him come into the blues. Not wasting another minute, Luffy pulls his hood over his face and hops down the tree branch for branch. As soon as his feet touch the ground, he shoots off towards the city. Luffy slinks down an alleyway and peers around the empty street. Taking advantage of the darkness, Luffy steps out and walks to the square to put his plan into action. He only hopes Ace will forgive him. The pole seems taller from up close. Luffy has to crane his head backwards to get a good look at the Jolly Roger. He turns his head to the port not too far away. There are still some ships coming to and fro on late-night trips. Hurry up and load it up, boys. We've taken too long to do this shipment, one of the men says with his hands placed sternly on his hips. He nods over to a crew member dragging a wagon onto the ship. Especially you, Larry. You're new on this ship and I heard you had a certain drinking problem. I've had nothing of the sort. But another man just ushers him away, patting his back. Luffy redirects his sight to the flag waving on their ship. Another Whitebeard mark. They must be protected too. He smirks. Found my escape route. Gotta make this fast though, they're leaving. Luffy scans the ground for something to throw at the flag. The dark makes it hard to see, but he manages to gather lots of sharp rocks. He shuffles them around in his hand, then pinches one in between his finger and thumb. It's now or never. Luffy brings his arm back and launches it towards the flag. To his dismay, it misses by a wide berth. He blinks in surprise, then scowls. Luffy flings another rock and this one grazes the tip of the fabric. He continues to fling them with better and better aim. The flag looks completely disheveled when the ammo runs out. Only bits and pieces of fabric remain attached to the pole. But the mark is definitely indistinguishable. Boy! The sudden shout startles Luffy and he jumps. What are you doing? Luffy can see the man now as he steps out of his home. Several more curious faces peek from behind curtains and out their doors to see what the commotion is about. You destroyed the flag. Someone else shouts. Most people turn to look at the remainder of the Jolly Roger and gape. You bastard. Who the hell do you think you are? Let's get him. They all start to advance and Luffy doubles back towards the inner city. He runs around the streets in a large circle, escaping the pursuing villagers. The only sound is sandals clacking against the pavement as Luffy sprints down to the docks. Taking a huge running leap, he springs onto the merchant boat and hides behind a stack of crates. What? Luffy holds his breath as the crew walks around the deck. The waves are pretty rough today. He comments after a couple seconds. The crew mumbles their agreements as they drift further and further away. Luffy peeks through the boxes back at the shore. The villagers are swarming the port, yelling and searching for him. He chuckles mischievously and hides again. Getting as comfortable as he can be, Luffy curls up and falls fast asleep. Line here. It's been a quiet night for Marco. The whole Whitebeard crew had decided to hit the hay early after their drinking party. On the other hand, Marco has been filling out paperwork for the last several hours. He rubs his eyes and forehead tiredly. Paperwork is the worst. At least no one has barged into his office yet. It must be a new record. A sudden ring of his den mushy makes Marco's brain jolt awake. With a heavy sigh, he pushes the papers out of the way and answers with a ka-chink. At that moment, the door creaks open and Ace wanders in with his hands in his pockets. Hey Marco. Thatch. Marco cuts him off with a finger to his lips and Ace shuts his mouth. Is this 1st Division Commander? The voice on the end asks. Marco. And yes, I am. Who is this? I'm the mayor from Teller Island in the West Blue. Marco recognizes it as one of their protected islands. Someone shot down your flag with rocks. Marco's mouth dips in a frown. Ace's eyes widen and he steps closer. Do you have any idea who did it, Yoi? Don't know. He or she was wearing a cloak with a hood. Are there any pirates there? Can you go tell them to find this guy? Marco asks, sitting up. I'm sorry, I can't, the mayor says. The pirates just left along with most of the merchant ships. Marco sighs and rubs his aching head again. Just put up the spare. It's probably just some kid pulling a dumb prank. Well, he was quite short, so I guess so. The mayor relents. Call me up if he decides to show his face again. All right, goodbye. The line goes off and Ace whistles. Kids are so troublesome these days, he says, shaking his head. Marco stares at Ace for a few moments then snorts. Right, only kids are troublesome. Why do I feel like you're somehow talking about me? Finally is all Luffy can think. He runs through town, dodging adults and children alike doing some shopping. Luffy's eyes are fixated on the medicine shop at the end of the road. Panting harshly, he enters the building. As soon as Luffy is inside, he slams the list of medicine on the front desk. The clerk jumps in surprise and gasps softly. It takes her a moment to shift her attention to the paper and she picks it up delicately. With a final look to Luffy, she turns around and goes in the back room to fetch what he needs. Finally catching his breath, Luffy sighs and sinks on a nearby chair. He sighs again, more loudly this time, and stares at the ceiling blankly. His arm is throbbing, and so is his head. Luffy also notices he's significantly weaker, like when he first got the shackle strapped on. The ride had lasted longer than he originally thought. He was stuck on that boat for an extended week with his constant full body ache. Well, Luffy thinks, nothing a little medicine can't fix. He looks around the shop to keep his mind off the pain. There isn't that many people in the store, mostly just gossiping old ladies and the occasional mother. Beside the shelves nearby, Luffy can hear the quibbling of two old men. Did you hear? About Teller Island, I mean. The one with glasses says to his companion. Luffy's attention peaks. The other grunts. How could I not? Especially if it's our island this hooligan might be coming after next. This person must be daft if he's messing around with Whitebeard's affairs. The companion shakes his head. Even though it's been a week, everyone is still on their toes about this. The town hall has even posted guards around the flag just in case the attacker comes by. So they have guards, Luffy notes. And looks like word is spreading quickly too. He feels happy for his achievement, but hopes with all his might that Ace's crew will forgive him. The man adjusts his glasses on the tip of his nose. The young these days. Grandpa. Luffy hears twins scampering and turns his head to look. There are two young boys, around 10 and 7, with big grins plastered on their faces. They are both dirty all over with twigs sticking out of their hair at all angles. A pang hits Luffy's chest, but he doesn't know what it is. Grandpa, guess what? Guess what? The younger one says energetically, bouncing on his toes. The glasses man leans to his friend with a smile. Speaking of the young, he whispers, making the listener chuckle. He turns back to his grandson. What is it, little Henry? Did you and Lucas catch the mystery creeper in the waterfall cave? Or was it the cliff river? It's the river in the cave, Grandpa. Lucas corrects, obviously annoyed. And it wasn't a mystery creeper, it was a water snake. I swear, Grandpa, your memory is getting worse and worse. No wonder you spend all your time in this sick bay. Lucas, their grandpa's friend, scolds. Don't be so rude to your grandfather or this establishment. Lucas just grumbles and looks away. Henry looks like he is going to explode. Anyway, if you are all done talking, we found a good hiding spot to see if the guy is going to attack our flag. You know the guy, the one that got Teller Island. His grandpa raises a hand to stop his grandson's rambling. Yes, Henry, I'm aware who it is, but you two shouldn't be fooling around such business. It's very dangerous. But Grandpa, I don't want to hear it. I expect better of you two, Lucas, he says, looking at the elder brother. Lucas just mutters something offensive under his breath. What was that, Lucas? Nothing, Grandpa, he says with fake innocence. Come on, Henry. We've got better stuff to do than hang around this place. They run outside and the old friends follow behind them. You're not leaving yet. Get back here or I'm going to talk to your parents. The grandpa yells, shaking a fist in the air. Luffy watches until their figures disappear from view. He stares at the vacant spot until well after they are gone, allowing the numb feeling into his body. Luffy lets it spread and he zones out. The crunching sound of a paper bag makes Luffy's senses return. He looks down, concerned about the large pain in his chest. Only this time he knows what it is as he stands to get his medicine. Envy, that'll be 70 police, says the clerk, tapping her long painted nails on the wooden surface. Luffy rummages through his pocket, taking out the proper amount. He realizes with a sigh he doesn't have many bullies left. The woman takes the money, eyeing him suspiciously. But Luffy doesn't care, he's already walking out the door. When the sunbeams hit his face, Luffy yawns loudly and stretches his arm. The ship had docked mid-afternoon and he slept the entire trip. It is now late afternoon and he needs something to eat before taking down this flag. He looks over to the Jolly Roger waving strongly near the port. The guards aren't directly beneath the pole, but they are a bit spread out around the area. Each one of them is making polite conversation with passerbys, but Luffy sees their eyes occasionally flick back to the flag. The town this time is more barren than the others. The houses and buildings are all made of creaky wood with some on really high stilts. It kind of reminds Luffy of some sort of cool jungle village. With a moment to himself, Luffy takes his medicine with a gag. He never gets used to the bitter taste, but his energy immediately returns. Glancing off to the side, Luffy sees a newsstand with the town paper. Squinting his eyes to make out the title of the front page, Luffy mumbles it aloud. Will our flag be next? You betcha. Luffy spins around to the two children he had spotted previously in the shop, Lucas and Henry. Henry, don't just go up to strangers. Lucas scolds. Henry looks up at Luffy, disregarding his brother's warning. We're going to catch him when he's just about to attack. Look, Henry points to a tall tree just across the street from the flag. We're going to be just like superheroes. Don't tell him everything, idiot. Lucas yells again, flicking Henry on the forehead. Henry pouts and rubs the sore spot. You're just bothering him with all your babble. Sujue. They both turn and are surprised to see Luffy with stars in his eyes. Superheroes are so cool. They both blink in disbelief, but Henry quickly jumps next to Luffy and rubs a finger under his nose arrogantly. That's right. And we're definitely going to be the best heroes ever when we catch him. A large growl makes them all silent. Luffy holds his stomach embarrassingly. Oops, got to go get something to eat. Henry smiles and holds out a fist. Okay then, my name is Henry and this is my older brother Lucas. When we meet again, Lucas and I will be heroes. Luffy chuckles and bumps his fist against the tinier one. Good luck catching him, he says, totally forgetting he's the one they are after. See ya. Wait, we didn't get your name. Lucas yells when Luffy has already jogged a fair distance ahead. Luffy, he responds, still waving. Then he turns around and jogs into the busier area of the jungle town. A nice feeling settles in his stomach as Luffy slows to a walk. By seeing the boy's determination, it makes him want to work extra hard to get to his own brother. Luffy exits the restaurant into the warm night. He swishes a toothpick side to side in his mouth, trying to get it in between his teeth. Since his earnings had reduced to a bare minimum, Luffy had sung in the restaurant. He earned his food and bullies and left with a cheerful word from a few citizens. Luffy honestly doesn't mind getting into this little routine. He always likes music and smiles, so this isn't all that bad. Spitting the toothpick out the side of his mouth, Luffy turns his head up to look at the many twinkling stars. I wonder if Ace is looking up at these right now. He ponders. Or Makino. Luffy frowns, his face going into uber serious mode. He needs a faster way to take down that flag. The guards are sticking to the pole like glue and are not letting off. Luffy has a clear view of the flag from where he is standing, but also the tall tree across from it. I hope Lucas and Henry get that bad guy. Luffy exclaims mentally, again forgetting who they are after. The flickering of a flame grabs Luffy's attention. He looks over to a lone villager lighting one of the many large torches scattered around town. Luffy eyes the matches in his hand as the man struggles to get the flame going. When the torch bursts to light, he drops the remainder of the match into it. Finished with the job, he places the box in his back pocket and walks away. An idea starts to form in Luffy's mind, and he creeps behind the unsuspecting citizen. Too easy, Luffy thinks, and he swipes the pack without being noticed. Stuffing it in his pocket, Luffy looks around for something that can catch on fire easily. Suddenly, Luffy remembers the newspaper stand from earlier today. In a few short minutes, he's near the shop. There's a woman packing up for the night, putting the papers away in boxes. With the same amount of difficulty as before, Luffy sneakily takes a newspaper and speed walks away. Now for the rock. Luffy heads off towards the port. When he arrives, Luffy jumps down from the docks onto the cold sand. He immediately begins his search with only the moonlight as his guide. While looking at the ground, he completely misses the sign in front of him until he smacks right into it. Gah! Luffy cringes, rubbing his head. What's the big idea with this sign getting in his way? It's too dark to make out the writing, so Luffy takes the box of matches out of his pocket and sticks it in his mouth. He pulls out a match and strikes it against the rough surface, igniting a tiny flame on the tip. With the box still held between his teeth, Luffy holds the small light up and discovers that the sign is a chart of incoming and departing ships. He can't believe his luck. They'll just go on ... this one. There's a merchant ship scheduled to leave a half an hour from now. All of a sudden he hears a crack in the bushes. He spins around to look, but drops the match in the sand. Luffy curses softly. After placing the box back in his pocket, he bends down to get the match but finds something else. It's a perfect rock. The match flickers out, but it's quickly forgotten. Luffy plops on his backside and takes the newspaper out of his cloak. With some struggle, he manages to wrap the rock completely in the paper. Ammo complete. Luffy grins, proud of his creation. The cracking resumes and Luffy shoots up from his spot. He gets in a defensive stance and glares at the forest up ahead. I bet it's a rabbit again, he thinks, annoyed. But this time there's red eyes glowing in the bushes, and that growling is definitely not his stomach. Slowly the animal steps out into the moonlight, its massive muscles rippling with every step it takes. Luffy glares at the wolf. He can take this guy, no big deal. Even if his arm is down for the count, he's got another and 2 legs to battle with. Bring it on, he yells and takes a step forward. But there is more rustling behind the predator and 2 other wolves emerge. Their mouths are foaming and their fur is standing on end. Crap, Luffy mutters. 3 is a lot more than 1. So when the first springs right at him, he swings a fist straight into his nose. The wolf barrels back into the other 2, knocking them off their paws. Luffy makes a break into the forest, hoping to get cover in the dark undergrowth. But the wolves have great noses, and soon he can hear their panting behind him. A sudden howl from one of them makes Luffy jump a little and he glances back. Yikes, there is one literally at his heels trying to get a good bite of his ankle. Luffy kicks his foot out and catches the predator in the eye. It swings its head to the side but continues pursuit. Luffy turns his head back to the front but is startled to see the 2 wolves jumping at him. On a split-second decision, he ducks downward, letting the 2 sail over his head and land in a tangled heap. The 2 wolves start scrabbling at each other as if they didn't want to share a meal. They both leap at each other and claw at each other's throats. Luckily, they are completely distracted from the chase. But Luffy is distracted too. He forgets about the 3rd wolf in that moment, and it takes the opportunity to close in fast. He screams in agony as the sharp teeth sink into his leg. The wolf pulls at the flesh, trying to rip it off. Luffy kicks at its face with his other foot, but the animal does not let up. Get off, he mumbles, eyes shadowed. The wolf is biting harder and Luffy scrunches his face in pain. Get off, he repeats, louder this time. But the wolf continues, only focusing on getting its meal. Get off, Luffy shouts. Energy ripples through the air, rustling the leaves and courses through everything in the vicinity. Then the oddest thing happens. The wolf stops biting and attacking altogether. Instead, it fixes its now wide and fearful gaze on Luffy, then passes out on the spot. Luffy is left a panting mess, propped up on his elbow. He watches the wolf for any signs of consciousness, but it merely twitches occasionally in its sleep. Looking past the wolf, he observes the 2 others, but they are in a similar state as their friend. Luffy doesn't dwell on what just happened. Instead, he pushes himself up to a sitting position and examines his wound. He pokes it experimentally and hisses. It's a nasty one, but it's nothing he hasn't received before back on Dawn Island. Luffy rummages through the paper bag on his side and pulls out his bandages. He wraps it around his leg and secures it by pulling it tight. 2 hands would be great to tie a knot right about now, Luffy mutters. Scooting over to a tree, Luffy places his hand on the rough bark and pushes himself up on 1 foot. He places his injured leg on the ground delicately, testing its weight. The leg stings a little, as expected, but he can still walk pretty well on it. A sudden flash of light has Luffy blind for a moment. He brings his arm up to block the brightness, but it's gone as fast as it came. Luffy watches the space where the light had come from. In the distance he can make out people hurrying around in a frenzy. Wait, they're definitely people, but they're also clowns. Immensely curious, Luffy decides to check it out. He glances at the wolves one last time, then hurries away before they wake up. The closer Luffy gets to the beach, the brighter his surroundings become. Soon enough he can walk without stumbling on random twigs and roots. Luffy reaches the edge of the forest and gapes. There is a pirate ship, but it is much larger and cooler than any of the others Luffy has seen. Not only that, but there is indeed clowns carrying boxes and chests of gold onto said ship. It is one of the most awesome things Luffy has laid eyes on, and he marvels at it all. Are they performing pirates or something? Maybe they're nice guys. When a man with checkerboard hair walks by, Luffy is about to talk to him, but stops when he sees the 6 guns strapped under his jacket. Or maybe they're not. Luffy settles behind a bush and watches them work. What Luffy doesn't understand is why they are docked completely around the bay and far from the port. It's a really long way from town and such an inconvenience. Luffy is distracted from his thoughts when a clown with a very large shiny red nose smacks one of the crew. What did I tell you about going into town? If someone catches sight of us and tells Whitebeard, we'll be flashily killed. He shrieks. The crew members around him shiver in fear. I'm sorry, Captain Buggy, the subordinate stutters, but we were running low on confetti cannons and I thought they were necessary, sir. Buggy rubs his chin in thought. They are important for our normally flashy entrances. Fine. You're lucky I'm such a good captain, or you'd be dead by now. The wimpy man falls to his knees and kisses the ground before his captain. Thank you, Captain Buggy. You are truly the best captain in all of he sees. He bellows. Well, of course I am. Now get back to work. Buggy orders. Aye aye. He scampers away, and a man with a half-shaved head walks next to his captain. Captain, do we really have to go to another Whitebeard-protected island? I mean, 1 is risky, but 2 seems to be pushing it. We have to Kabaji. We didn't find the materials we need to rebuild the figurehead, and the next closest island is that one. Buggy responds. But Captain, enough Kabaji. Even if Whitebeard shows up, I'll show him just how powerful the Buggy crew just is. Yes, he'll cower at our strength. He shouts. The crew cheers in response. So does that mean we can dock closer to town when we get there? No way. I mean we should stay away from the port just to keep the citizens from panicking. You know, just in case they are too afraid to give us what we need. Buggy trails off weakly and cowardly. Suddenly he coughs and his voice goes back to its loud and boisterous self. Anyway, I don't want to have to spend another second here. Just load up the things we stole off the island. Quickly. Aye aye, Captain. The crew chants in unison. Luffy, on the other hand, has his eyes trained on the large lion playing with a ball the size of a small car. He laughs when it stumbles over the toy and rolls on its back. His laughter eventually dies down and he wipes the tears from his eyes. That was hilarious. Now what did that clown do? I thought I heard him say something. Luffy hums and racks his brain, but he soon gives up. Oh well, I guess he didn't say anything. Luffy turns away from the beach and goes back into the forest. He is reluctant to leave the cool clowns, but he needs to destroy the flag before his boat leaves. Once Luffy has made fair distance between himself and the pirates, he walks the rest of the way on the beach. Didn't forget about you, he exclaims mentally, taking the paper-covered rock off the ground where he left it by the sign. Now for the hard part. Luffy sneaks beside a building and peeks around the corner. The pole holding the flag is at the center of the clearing. There are 4 guards, each one looking either north, east, south, or west. They're all holding guns against their chests, ready to swing them into action at any moment. I need a good distraction, he resolves, pulling up his hood. Luffy scans the area when his eyes land on one of the big tiki torches lined along the street. As soon as the guard nearest to him turns away, he slinks past and hides behind the torch. Here goes nothing. Luffy takes a few steps back, then body checks the tiki. It wobbles a little, but doesn't tip over. So Luffy tries again and again until the rocking becomes unsteady. Do you guys hear that creaking sound? A guard asks his comrades. They all strain their ears to listen, but it's too late for them as the torch is already teetering over to the next one beside it. There is a large boom when the collision happens. It causes the second torch to lean over and hit the next in line like a domino effect. What Luffy didn't plan for is all of them to catch on fire. A circle of fire is created and people run out of their homes to escape the flames. The guards abandon their posts and go for the hoses to quell the fire. Luffy takes advantage of the distraction and places his rock on the ground. He pulls a match out of the box and holds it next to the flickering flames, watching as it catches on fire. Luffy takes a deep breath and focuses. This is going to be difficult. He can't mess up. Quickly, Luffy lights the rock on fire and throws the match away. He covers his hand in his cloak and grabs the flaming rock. With a hiss of pain, he throws it at the flag with all his might. The rock barely skims the side, but it's enough as the Jolly Roger catches on fire. Luffy watches the flag turn to ashes as he blows on his burnt hand. Having one arm really sucks. Henry. Luffy looks up behind him to the tall tree. Hanging from a high branch is none other than Henry. Lucas is at the base of the branch, desperately trying to reach his brother. Below them is the fire and smoke, slowly climbing upwards. "Help!" Henry cries, struggling to hold on. Quick as a snake, Luffy runs towards them, but a sudden burst of flames blocks his way. "Damn it!" he curses, covering his mouth to filter out the smoke. Henry is still dangling helplessly by his fingertips. Every time Lucas tries to reach out, the weight makes the branch bend closer to the fire. Luffy looks around for something to assist him. Then, he sees the men grabbing hoses and drenching buildings away from where the children are. "Oi!" Luffy yells, running towards them. Several men turn to him, but they keep the hoses running. They need help. The fire is too strong over there. Luffy points to the ailing brothers. Just as he does, the branch makes a sickening crack and both brothers scream. The branch bends sharply downward right above the flames, but stays intact. "Holy Sea Kings! Men, aim your hoses over there while two of us go and rescue those boys." Without delay, the guards turn the water to the fire near the grand tree. Luffy runs to the edge of the fire, impatient to get closer. There is another crack and Henry screams as his hand slips off the branch. Though the fire has quelled a little bit, it's not enough to prevent damage. Everyone scrambles to catch the boy, but he is much too far for any of them to grab. "Henry!" Lucas yells desperately, gripping the wood so hard it draws blood. Luffy backs up a few steps, then sprints as hard as he can and leaps high in the air. He crashes into Henry mid-jump and they fly over the fire and into the forest. The cool vegetation feels like instant relief on their skin, but they keep coughing from the smoke. The light from the fire illuminates the dark forest, making clear visibility. Luffy groans and rolls over on his stomach. Not too far away is Henry, looking shaky but overall okay. Henry. Luffy looks over to Lucas as he slides next to his brother. He pulls Henry on his lap and looks him in the eye. "Are you all right?" he asks. Henry nods and shrugs out of his brother's lap. Lucas turns his relieved gaze over to Luffy. The change is instant as stone-cold fury takes over his features. "We saw everything. You're the one that's destroying the flags." Luffy just stares at them from under his hood, expressionless. "It's your fault," Lucas yells, balling his bloody hands into fists. "You started the fire and put Henry in danger." Henry stands up and grabs at his brother's sleeve. "But Lucas, he saved me when I fell," he pleads. Lucas's cold gaze does not waver. He's the one that caused the fall in the first place. Now he's going to pay. Lucas walks toward Luffy with his fist raised. "Lucas, stop. He's not a bad person. Please." Henry grabs his brother's arm and tries to pull him backwards. Lucas stops for a moment and looks back at Henry. "Why are you defending him? He put our town in danger. He put you in danger. How can you possibly forgive him for everything he's done?" They are all silent and only the crackling of flames is heard. "Because he didn't want to hurt anybody. He's a good person, Lucas, I can tell." Luffy stares at the elder. He watches as Lucas tenses up, then sags in what appears to be defeat. "You're a handful, you know that, right?" Lucas says, ruffling his little brother's hair. Henry giggles delightedly. The flames are smaller now, as the townspeople are doing everything to get rid of them. The air is clearer where the trio stand, and they don't cough as much. "I don't understand." Lucas turns back to Luffy. "Why would you do all of that and not want to cause any harm?" Luffy chooses this moment to stand up. His hood shadows his face, so they can't recognize him. "Because it's to find someone who can help me," he answers. "Then get the Marines to help. Surely you don't need to go through all this trouble to find one single person," Lucas says in disbelief. Luffy shakes his head. "This is something those dumb Marines can't help with." He pouts. Lucas suddenly realizes how young this person seems. "If I want to save something really important to me, only my brother can help." "Brother," Henry says shyly. Luffy grins. Suddenly, gunshots go off and they all duck to the forest floor. "It was the person messing around with the flags that did this. I saw him throw a flaming rock from my window." Someone yells. "He must be nearby. Men, head for the docks. Don't let him get away," says a guard. Most scamper off to the port while others remain to search the forest. "I need to get on that ship and fast," Luffy thinks. He moves to get up, but there is crashing of men's boots all around them. Maybe he took those kids that landed in the forest too. All three can hear one of them say, "I hope they're all right. I'll beat that damn hooligan if I see he's laid a finger on them." Another says. Luffy tenses at the menace in his tone. Something prods at Luffy's side. He turns to Lucas and Henry questioningly. Lucas leans in close to Luffy. "We'll make a distraction. You go on ahead." Luffy blinks at him. "But why would you help?" he whispers back. Henry giggles quietly beside Lucas. "It's because you need to find your brother. I would do the same if I needed Lucas's help." Lucas and Luffy smile at Henry. Luffy nods firmly. "All right, I'm relying on you." He rolls under a nearby bush as the other two stand up from the ground. Anybody there?" Lucas asks innocently. "It's scary in these woods alone," Henry says with fake worry. The crashing is louder this time and Luffy ducks down further. "Are you boys okay? Did the fire hurt you?" A few men emerge from the bushes and the first kneels down to the brothers. Henry shakes his head exaggeratedly. It didn't get me that bad, but the meanie who grabbed me ran away over there, with childish tears running down his face. He points in the opposite direction of the port. Luffy struggles to hold his laughter. These guys are hilarious. Don't worry, boys, we'll get him. Jackson, take these kids home. The rest of us will pursue the villain. The men run in the direction Henry directed while Jackson ushers them home. They both look back and smile when Luffy winks at them from his spot. When they are gone from sight, Luffy crawls out of the bush and sprints to the port. Damn it, he curses mentally. There are guards everywhere, all around the ports, on every ship, and looking in every direction. Luffy walks around the shelter of the forest trying to catch a glimpse of his transportation. As he steps a little closer, he notices a new poster plastered on the schedule board. All ships are to be inspected. No leaving port until tomorrow after inspection. Anyone who refuses to cooperate will be subject to questioning. Luffy looks to the boat he is supposed to be on, but to his disappointment it is full of guards. He's got to leave now. They are clearing the island from head to toe and they will find him eventually. Wait, is that ship still there? Luffy suddenly breaks into the forest. He sprints as fast as his injured leg allows, in hopes to catch the clown ship he visited earlier. When he reaches the edge of the forest, Luffy bursts into the clearing. A smile pulls at the edges of his lips. It's still here, but to his dismay he is looking at the back end of the ship. No, wait. Luffy runs to the leaving ship. He sees that the anchor still isn't pulled up yet and decides it's do or die. Running probably the fastest in his life, he makes a running leap over the water between him and the rope. When his hand connects to the rope, he grips it for dear life while his legs kick at empty air. Come on, Luffy grits as he struggles to hold on. Luffy flails his legs and barely manages to scrabble on. He is panting harshly and eventually he slowly inches his way toward the deck. When he reaches the peak, he looks over the railing. The clown or pirates are running around making preparations to leave. The big-nosed clown waves his arms around commandingly. Hurry up. There's action in town so they might have seen us. Someone pull up the anchor now. He yells, Yes, Captain Buggy. Luffy knows then that he needs to move, quickly and silently. He jumps over the railing and ducks behind an open steel door. Pausing at the entrance, he takes one last peek at the island. The fire isn't nearly as bad as it could have been. It has hardly touched the forest at all. Luffy watches, mesmerized as smoke rises from the barren pole in the center of town, then closes the door behind him. He swallows thickly and shuts his eyes tight, too much like Foosha, pushing his bad memories away. He looks at his surroundings. Wherever he is, it is really dark, but the small hole of light from the window on the door exposes the outline of a staircase leading downwards. Luffy cautiously steps to the bottom deck, wary of the darkness around him. At the end of the stairs is another steel door. When Luffy pulls it open, he is met with what appears to be the cargo hold. The moon is shining directly into the windows along the wall, illuminating the room. Boxes and barrels are stacked from floor to ceiling unevenly and messily. Luffy grins widely when he sees a barrel of apples next to the window. He trots over and plops on top of two crates piled next to it. Stretching his legs out, Luffy grabs an apple and munches it leisurely. Upstairs he can hear the thumping of drunken footsteps dancing to loud music. Luffy grumbles and bites his apple. He wants to party too. After eating enough apples to ease his hunger, he pulls out his bag of medicine. He downs the bottles in seconds and sticks his tongue out in disgust. Bleck, he says out loud, packing the bottles away. Then he notices the bandages sitting snugly at the bottom of the bag. Luffy realizes he hasn't changed his bandages in a while, so he unwraps his old dirty ones. He's not going to lie, it looks pretty red. The stitches feel a little sore too, but he supposes it's normal after the large wound he received. Luffy touches the nub and notices it feels a little numb to the touch. Perhaps it is the work of the medicine. He shrugs and starts wrapping it up again with fresh bandage. Just as he pulls the last knot tight, a loud boom startles him. A massive crash and rattle reverberate throughout the ship. The cheers from upper deck suddenly turn into shouts when another boom is heard. This time, something crashes through the cargo hold. Luffy jumps up on a crate on the far wall. A gaping hole is created right at the place where he was just signing. Water pours in at a rapid rate and floods the floors. What the oh no? Luffy wobbles on the crate as it starts to float along with the rest of the cargo. He leans against the back wall, trying to regain his balance. One bad fall and he's done for. Once he's stable, Luffy carefully leans away from the wall and gets in a balanced stance. He jumps onto the box closest to him and repeats the pattern until he meets the door. It is slightly ajar from the cannon attack earlier, so Luffy pushes it open while balancing on a barrel. Most of the stairs aren't drowned in water, so Luffy hops up onto the dry portion. As soon as his feet touch the steps, he bursts onto the open deck. It's a frenzy. Clown pirates are running in all directions, setting up cannons and patching up the ship. Nobody spares him a glance as they sprint all over the deck. Another whistle pierces the air and something lands into the water next to them. Luffy grips the wall as the ship heaves to the side. Several crew members lose their footing and slide across the deck. Luffy looks out into the darkness but can't see what is attacking them. Another boom sounds and a flash of light projects off the water. Then he sees a pirate ship ahead of them. The cannon heads to the enemy ship but lands just short of the stern. The pirates growl in frustration and scramble even harder to load the cannons. Luffy feels a slight panic. He can't have the ship sink. He can't swim. Even rowing out on an escape boat is out of the question with one arm. A sloshing from behind has Luffy turning around. More and more stairs are being covered in the water from the newly created hole. They all don't know they were hit. I've got to tell them before this thing goes down. He realizes, I can't let them know I'm here though. They'd kick me off the ship or kill me. A short clown pirate walking rather unsteadily passes in front of Luffy, obviously still drunk from their previous party. He's wearing colorful striped harem pants and a bright blue turtleneck sweater. He has an overly large polka dot top hat, big yellow shoes and a red curly wig. Obviously the poor soul can't take all the action happening around him and he passes out face first on the deck. Luffy immediately grabs the fellow and drags him behind a wall. A few minutes later, Luffy emerges wearing the costume. It's a little baggy, but it'll do. He chooses to leave his cloak on though to hide his missing limb. Luffy steps back out into the Havoc, leaving the unconscious and almost naked man on the ground hidden. Luffy runs around deck until he sees their captain. Booney, no. Buggy. Yes, Buggy, standing on the higher deck giving orders and listening to reports. Luffy pulls the wig further down his face to keep it hidden and stumbles over his big shoes to Buggy. Captain Buggy, I have something urgent to report. Luffy yells. Captain Buggy turns to him with a big sneer. Well, get on with it. What's wrong? He screeches back. The cargo hold has been hit by cannon fire and is flooding fast. We'll sink if it's not fixed soon. Sir, Luffy adds for emphasis, saluting. Buggy turns to two men running across the deck. You two, go gather more people and patch up the hole on lower deck. Now, you go too. Luffy jumps when he is addressed. I'm not going to let a simple hole sink us. If we go down, it has to be as flashily as possible. But of course, they can never sink us because I am the strongest pirate in all the blues. Joy ha ha ha. Buggy jumps down from his perch and splits apart. His body parts fly off of the ship and head to the enemy ship, Buggy cackling the whole way. Luffy marvels at the power with starry eyes, but one of the clowns tugs him towards the storage room. All three scamper off, but when they round the corner, Luffy stops and backtracks. He replaces the clown clothes for his originals and throws them overboard. Then he tosses the drunk pirate overboard with a life buoy. Luffy looks around his hiding place and is relieved to see that the Buggy pirates have fixed the hole and removed most of the water from the storage room. Hey, do you recognize that guy? Luffy stiffens when a pirate asks his companion. He glances at them and they are indeed looking in his direction. Luckily, another cannon shot distracts them and they go off running to help. Luffy runs to a place with better cover. It's a small space between the captain's quarters and the main mast. He sits snugly between the two and observes the fighting. Luffy breathes a sigh of relief hours later when the Buggy pirates pull through and the other ship sinks. The crew cheers in unison as Buggy flies back to the ship with a shit-eating grin. No one can defeat Captain Buggy, strongest pirate in all of the blues, he declares. Everyone chants Buggy's name. It's time to party. The crew cheers even louder, and a party is set up faster than anything Luffy has ever seen before. Everyone is beginning to wind down again and Luffy decides he needs to find someplace else to go. So when no one seems to be looking, Luffy climbs up the main mast and jumps onto the abandoned crow's nest. He lays down on his back and allows his legs to dangle off the sides. Luffy sets his arm on his stomach as he watches the celebration unfold. He thinks over the events of his busy day and feels a bit overwhelmed. What if this plan doesn't work? What if he's just wasting time? But then he shakes his head to rid all of his self-doubt. This will work. He'll see Ace again. He won't fail. Luffy sighs and looks up at the stars. He can do this. Right here. Right here. Get your newspaper here. Big headline. 6 Whitebeard flags shot down in 1 month. That's right folks, 1 month. And the culprit has not been caught. Read all about it here. Luffy reads his own newspaper. He's been listening to the salesman and the shocked reactions of the citizens for a while now. He places the paper delicately on his lap and selects another cracker from his bag. When he crunches on it, crumbs fly off the sides and fall on the ground. Previously gathered seagulls flock his feet in hopes of getting a piece of the tasty snack. Luffy watches the squabbling seagulls in amusement, then picks up the paper again. From what the article says, it seems that they've picked up on the fact that he hitches rides from merchant ships and that he's been going along the islands in order. He grins to himself. Anytime now the Whitebeard crew will come along and find him. Though, he's upset it's taking this long. But it won't be far away anymore. He most definitely has their attention now. Now that the newspaper is out, Luffy figures people are going to be much warier of stowaways on their ships. That goes for pirates too. They will look for the first opportunity to send him in for some sort of reward. Luffy tosses the paper aside and stretches his sore shoulders. He's been squeezing in some training between trips to improve his aim and accuracy. This entire expedition has made him weak, and he can't fall behind. Luffy puts another cracker in his mouth and stands up. The seagulls scatter into the sky, cawing all the while. He watches them for a moment, then turns around, smirking. He walks into town, shuffling the matches in his pocket. Pops, it's getting out of hand. Someone is definitely sending a message. Marco looks up to his father and Captain Whitebeard with a newspaper clutched in his hand. You're right, my son. Whitebeard responds. We've had too many of our crew away on missions to handle this one, but now we can take action. Marco nods and crosses his arms. It's probably someone who wants to challenge us, Yoi. Though I have to admit, this person is really adamant on getting our attention. Whitebeard takes a swig of his sake. If I'm right, this challenger has been going in a line pattern. They are leading us straight to them. I don't know whether they are stupid or smart, Yoi. Marco snorts. Whitebeard chuckles and stands up. The wooden deck creaks under his massive weight. Marco, take Thatch, Izo, and Ace with you on this mission. Actually, Pops, Marco scratches his head tiredly. Ace is still away on his mission for the time being. When we called, he said something about some giant lizard and hung up. Whitebeard laughs and it booms through the room. Gurararara. All right, my son, just take Thatch and Izo then. That should be enough to take care of this issue. All right, Yoi. We'll leave right away, Marco says. And he goes outside to tell his brothers of their new mission. Luffy is screwed. He's currently running to the docks, praying that some ship is leaving this Oda-forsaken island. Luffy runs through the boxes piled high under the orange torchlights. He turns a corner and ducks down between two large rocks. Behind him, people are yelling and running everywhere. Luffy just sinks to the ground, fighting to keep his eyes open. He has to wait until they leave. How did he land in this mess? Well, it all started when he set the flag on fire. Luffy had tried to get around the guards by pretending to be a merchant, but the guards had figured out his intentions and attempted to catch him. Now he's been running around practically all night, dodging guards and looking for a way out. He sighs and leans further onto the rock, but a cracking sound has him sitting up again. Luffy takes out his paper bag and his face immediately turns into a scowl. Damn it. He flips the bag upside down and morsels of glass and liquid slip out. The bag was jostled too much while he was running and now everything is destroyed and unusable. Only one jar remains intact, but the contents are low. He packs it away anyway, saving it for later. Luffy rests his head against the rock and breathes heavily. His energy is sapping away like he just got his cuff on again. That medicine was nullifying the drowsy effects of sea stone, but without it he's back to being weak and tired. I've got to clear my head, Luffy tells himself. Keep going down the port, there has to be an open ship. He strains his ears for any more footsteps, but they have all gone. Carefully, Luffy jogs on the silent docks. He's extremely open but no one comes to investigate. Up ahead he can see a gathering of the people after him. Luffy ducks behind a brick building and peeks at them. It's too far away to hear anything, but he can tell that they're arguing with someone. One of the men from the group breaks off and charges the person they are arguing with. Several of his companions hold him back with struggle while the other man just stands there with an angry sneer. Then he spins around and waves his hand dismissively at them. None of the group look pleased, but they move elsewhere. Someone else pops out of nowhere and talks to the remaining man. They converse for a while then board their ship. Wait, ship? Luffy distracts his eyes from the men to the large wooden vessel. A pirate ship, he thinks excitedly. Luffy manages to get closer and hides behind a cart. At this point more men have come off the ship to get more cargo. Nothing can make Luffy happier than to have a nice long nap right now, but he flicks his head to stay awake. Stupid cuff making him exhausted. Luffy looks around the area, but there aren't any openings he can use to get on the ship. If he runs, he'll be too open and there are way too many pirates around. Also, if Luffy is spotted, he doesn't think he'll have the energy to escape. From the same direction the crowd left in, he hears voices quickly advancing. Are they coming back? He wonders, startled. I've got to get out of here. Luffy searches desperately for an escape route when his eyes land on two pirates who are transporting a wagon onto the ship. The cart has a brown tarp over it to hide the contents, but Luffy can see a golden sheen underneath. Luffy hops on the spot to psych himself up, then runs as fast as he can when the pirates are distracted. Then he dives at the wagon and slides under the blanket. The coins immediately clink as they shift under Luffy's weight. He slithers further into the pile to hide himself completely and flinches at the noise. He lay there silently as the wagon jolts on its old wheels. As it rolls along with Luffy inside, he notices their pace slacken. Did this thing get heavier or something? One of the pirates complains. The front of the wagon shifts upwards and they wheel on at a faster pace. I'll help you, the other one responds. Damn, those villagers are coming back again. They're such idiots, assuming we hid the guy they are after. Even made us stay out late for dam inspection. We're pirates. If we weren't all friendly with Whitebeard, I would love to ravage this town. The cart suddenly hitches and the terrain is smoother. Luffy hears the creaking of a wooden deck, indicating they are on board the ship. We've got to go. The villagers are coming back to interrogate us, the pirate says, setting the cart down. Yeah, we shouldn't risk them getting on our bad side ... more than they already are. Ha. The two leave the wagon and their voices gradually fade away. Luffy lays uncomfortably in silence, which is rudely interrupted by a growling in his stomach. If only this was a food cart. He pouts. A few minutes later he can feel the rocking of the boat and hear waves crashing against the bow. The pirates have quieted down, but he can still make out their pissed mumblings as they pass by. Luffy settles down on the coins, trying to get as comfortable as possible. He breathes in the metallic scent all around him and closes his eyes, succumbing to the exhaustion racking his brain. How am I going to get out of this now? Luffy is back in the cells. Beside him is Makino, chained up but still smiling through all the worry and pain she's no doubt experienced. He looks ahead. There's the mayor and bandits. Daden keeps grinding her teeth together, a habit she has picked up to keep the tobacco cravings at bay. Whoop Slap fiddles with the cuffs on his wrists and glances worriedly at the very still form beside him. Luffy looks down at himself. His clothes are very worn and have several holes and tears. The sea stone cuff is still there, sapping Luffy's energy away and making it harder than ever to do the work he is forced into. Suddenly, a hand grasps his and he looks up at Makino, but he can't see her face. Luffy is sure he can, but the harder he tries the blurrier it looks. Baffled, he turns back to the mayor and bandits. Oddly enough, they look the same as Makino. Actually, so does everyone else in the room. But now all their non-existent gazes are trained on Luffy. Makino says something, but it's garbled and unclear. Luffy searches her face desperately for anything he can understand. Instead, she grasps both of his hands and shakes them roughly. Hold on, 2 hands. And it's burning hot. The intense heat tears at Luffy's skin and he cries out in surprise. Magma pours out of the walls and pools on the ground. It flows in continuous stream, coming closer and closer to his chained feet. He struggles against his binds, but they are too strong and he's too weak. Too weak. Makino's hands are still grasping his in a death grip. He yells at her to let go, but realizes his voice won't form any coherent words. The magma comes closer to both of them and Luffy inches to the back of the cage, pulling Makino along. But before they can move any further, Makino jerks him forward so that his face is right in front of hers. You took too long, she screeches. Until now, Luffy has never heard her use that tone in his life. Now we're all dead. We trusted you but you left us behind. Luffy's heart cries in utter anguish. And he tries to tell her. He tries to say he is trying. That every single moment away from them is a moment of agony. He tries to apologize and beg for forgiveness, but nothing comes out. And now she is just screaming at him without a mouth, without a face, and he can't do anything but listen to this damn nightmare. More voices chime in and Luffy sees it's Daden and the others. They're all saying the same hurtful things as Makino, and Luffy realizes dully at the same time. They're all sitting and the magma finally reaches the top of their hip bones. Luffy screams but the others don't seem to feel it. Makino's nails draw blood on Luffy's wrists, but compared to the incinerating heat on his torso, he doesn't even register it. I quote him sorry. I quote him sorry Makino. Everyone. He tries to drown out their words but his voice just sounds like a series of broken sobs. As their words get louder, the magma rises higher until it is up to their mouths. Luffy howls and cries from the mental overload. Then it stops. He gasps in the fresh air and coughs hoarsely. After a few seconds, Luffy glances around him. He's under a flag, a Whitebeard flag to be precise, and it is on fire. Luffy, said Teen snaps his head around because he can't be hearing that person yet. Ace. His voice is working now, but he doesn't care. All of his thoughts are on his brother and how he is standing right there. Luffy stands up and takes a step forward with a relieved smile. But then he stops. Ace's face doesn't look happy at all. His frown is deep and the hate in his eyes makes Luffy still. You destroyed the pride of my crew. What kind of stupid bastard does that? You even left the village behind. Why would I help them? Come on Luffy, tell me exactly why. Ace taunts. Luffy is shaking, but he doesn't know why he feels like this in front of his brother. Because we need you, Ace. I need you. Please Luffy, like I would take your word. Such a worthless crybaby who is always a waste of my time. I regret not killing you as a kid. I should have just. Ace slides a finger across his neck. Why are you saying these things, Ace? Luffy's voice shakes along with his body. The words hurt him so much and he fears what Ace will say next. Why? Because these things are the truth. Leaving you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm finally feeling something other than annoyance and loathing every day. Luffy winces into his horror. Ace starts laughing. Look at you, actually thinking I liked you and would help you. It's pathetic. If only the nobles sold you off earlier so I didn't have to look you in the face again. Ace sneers, and he waltzes closer to Luffy. Stop. I know you don't feel this way. Big silent tears tumble down Luffy's face. He's hurting so much. This is a million times worse than the lava. Shut up and don't talk to me ever again. Ace reaches forward and grabs Luffy's bicep. To Luffy's horror, it starts to crumble away and Ace is just standing there, but his face is gone now. Luffy blinks once, and suddenly everyone from the cages is behind Ace. He blinks twice and their faces disappear. His whole arm crumbles away, and there's a sharp pain to his shoulder. How could you, Luffy? You left us to die. This is all your fault. Luffy grips his shoulder and curls into a ball on the ground. He squeezes his eyes shut and tries to block out the screams of hatred. I'm so sorry. Please, please, he begs weakly, burying his head into his knees. When the shouts fade away, Luffy remains curled up on the ground. Then he hears a ticking sound. It's slow at first, but then the tempo builds. For some reason, Luffy feels like he has to look up. So when the ticking goes so fast it's a steady stream of noise, he shoots his head up. Ace is there, and he grabs Luffy's face. Luffy. Luffy's eyes fly open and he gasps for air. Did you guys hear anything? Someone asks. He wipes away the tears on his face and forces his breathing to settle. No man, just the ocean. Someone else responds. The tears tumble down Luffy's face again and he wipes at them furiously this time. That's the worst one yet, he thinks shakily. With one last shuddering breath, Luffy settles back down on his stomach. He feels hot, feverish even, and sweat gleams on his skin. He has changed from his previous hiding spot to the wagon that he is currently inhabiting. Honestly, he thought it would be more comfortable than laying on coins. But it turns out it's not much better. Luffy was lucky he didn't get caught. These pirates are highly attentive and he has hardly been able to move, let alone change positions all night. Even when the ship docked once, he couldn't escape because they were so high on alert. After being nearly caught twice, Luffy has been more quiet and still than he has probably ever been in his life. As a result, he feels like complete and utter shit. He's so starving and his arm stub hurts a lot. Luffy fears one of his stomach growls will alert the pirates of his presence. But he'll get out soon. He hears the pirates talking about how they are close to shore. Willing himself to forget the nightmare, Luffy gathers his bearings and prepares to spring outside. Line here. It's a very nice night. The stars are shining and the air is warm. Everyone is out on the town, shopping and partying. Lanterns are strung up everywhere and the scent of cherry blossoms flows in the breeze. 3 men walk from a local weapons shop. One has a large pompadour hairstyle and speaks loudly, causing others to shy away from him. The lady man next to him wears a purple kimono and face makeup. He yells at the boisterous man to shut up and proceeds to smack said man on the head. The third man looks relatively calm with his lazy eyes and lacks expression. His hair looks similar to a blonde pineapple and his companions always seem to comment on it. Marco. The pompadour man moans to the pineapple head. What is it now, Thatch? Marco replies, clearly irritated. How much longer until we find this guy? I don't know, Yoy, that's why we are looking. He grits. If you spent less time complaining and more time searching for suspicious behavior, this wouldn't be taking so long. The makeup-wearing man says. But Aizu, shouldn't we just wait by the flag until he shows up instead of wandering around without an idea of what this guy looks like? Aizu rolls his eyes. If we did that then it would be obvious what we're planning. So until then, stop acting like a spoiled child. Aizu karate chops Thatch on the head and he falls over onto the cobblestone street. Marco sighs and shakes his head at their bickering. Maybe we should check the docks. We haven't been around there much, he suggests. It doesn't take long to get there, just a few minutes at a leisurely pace. As the threesome approach, they notice the many fishermen packing up for the night. The pirates immediately set to patrol the dock. Thatch, for once, remains silent as they look for anything odd. Marco extends his observation haki in all directions and uses his phoenix senses to boost his range. I don't feel anything suspicious, he observes. Everything in his radius seems clear with no unusual activity. Excuse me. All of them look curiously to their left. There is an old man bent down tying his boat to the dock with a thick rope. He has paused in his task but is still knelt down with his eyes focused on Marco, Thatch and Aizu. Can we help you, Yoy? Marco asks, expression neutral as they walk up to him. You're all Whitebeard pirates, right? The elder asks, gesturing to the tattoo visible on Marco's chest. That's right. Is there something you want? Aizu asks, putting his hands on his hips. The old man shakes his head. No, it's just I take it you're all here to catch the brat that's been taking down your flags. He returns to tying his knot. Thatch nods. Yes, you wouldn't happen to know anything about him, would you? I'm afraid I know only as much as the papers tell us. But it's about time you pirates got here. We don't want our only source of protection gone. With a final tug on his rope, the old man stands up. Just then, Marco feels something odd with his observation haki. You guys sense that? He asks his friends. They nod in return and focus their haki on an area further down the docks. Marco pushes his haki until he concentrates on a single vessel. He's on that pirate ship. Suddenly a small figure in black springs out of a wagon on the ship. One of the pirates spots him and slashes down with his sword. Luckily, the figure dodges to the side and jumps onto the docks. Marco notices how he stumbles when he lands. "Come on, Yoi," Marco says to his friends. But just as he turns around, the cloaked figure sprints past all of them and heads into the city. "I've got this," Marco says, and he chases the figure. The cloaked man up ahead doesn't notice him at first. He's just concentrated on getting away from the scene. But as soon as Marco gains ground, that's when the figure seems to know he's being chased. He ducks into a dark alleyway and hopes to lose his pursuer. "Oh no, you don't, Yoi." Marco zooms around the corner and is surprised to see the man jumping off of the close walls to gather momentum. "Clever, but you can't get away from me." Marco does the same and the chase resumes. The cloaked man has already gotten a head start, so Marco senses his path with observation hacking. The commander speeds up when he confirms where the figure is, springing from wall to wall. When he jumps around a corner, the cloaked man finally comes into view. At first glance he's like a fox, swift and fast. But Marco sees how his ankles twist oddly when he lands with too much force and how he sometimes skids across the ground. Before Marco can confront him, the figure looks back quickly, then springs onto the rooftops. He wastes no time bounding from one roof to another at a faster pace. "This guy's nimble," he thinks, mildly impressed as he follows behind. Marco lands delicately on the rooftop just in time to see the figure disappear back down into the maze of alleys. Not hesitating another second, Marco dashes on the rooftops and plunges down to where he last saw him. As expected, the figure is nowhere to be seen. "At this rate, I'm going to be chasing him all night," Marco realizes with a sigh. "I think I'll wait until he tires himself out." To get a better range, Marco goes on the rooftops once again. He closes his eyes in concentration and releases a wave of observation haki. "There you are." Marco springs back down and runs on the path towards his target. Once he is about 3 alleys away, he slows his pace to follow the offender, but not so close to be seen. Marco follows him for about 15 minutes, then decides to catch up to the brat. He can't possibly still have enough energy to get away now. Jumping onto the rooftop again, Marco follows along the alley to where the figure should be. But there's no one there. Crap. He's not where Marco had anticipated. In fact, he's not anywhere. Where did you go? Marco wonders, eyes narrowing. He takes a deep breath and once again searches the area with his haki. But Marco can't sense him anymore. Not even a hint of his presence remains. "Damn, I got careless." Marco lands on the ground and stretches his senses further. "No good, he's out of my range." He clicks his tongue in anger, then walks back through the dark alley and into the city. Marco blinks at the sudden lantern light that invades his eyes. He rubs them for a moment, partially for relief, partially to delay going back to his potentially angry crewmates. Then he walks down the street with his hands shoved in his pockets. As Marco passes by, he notices the curious looks directed at him and guesses they are wondering why he barreled through town earlier. When he returns to the port, he is immediately glomped with questions from Thatch. "Marco, where is he? Why didn't you catch him? Did he threaten to cook you up and eat your chicken?" "Oh." He's cut off when a nail-polished hand smacks him on the head. "Let the man speak, will you?" Aizu chides. He turns his unimpressed gaze to the 1st Division commander. "Well, let's hear your explanation." Marco sighs in exhaustion and rubs the back of his head. "I was careless, Yoi. I tried to tire him out, but he got too far away without me knowing." "Why didn't you just use your phoenix form? You could have swooped down and nabbed him in no time." Thatch asks, now sporting a large bruise. "When we got here, I had a word with the mayor. He told me specifically not to frighten the citizens with my powers at any time. If I did it now, at night, I'd be clearly visible, Yoi. I guess that makes sense. He only wants the best for his town. But still, it's making it harder for us to catch this guy," Aizu says, sticking his nose up. "Sorry about all of this, Yoi." Marco apologizes. Aizu waves his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it. We'll just stick with the original plan. He always strikes at night, so we'll just stay here until he does. But for now," Aizu walks up to Marco and buttons up his shirt. "What are you doing?" If there's a good chance the offender hasn't seen this, Marco recognized it from the different design. Then he doesn't know who we are. But he has probably seen Marco's face while he was being chased. He'd know we are after him anyway. Thatch points out. "Like I said," Aizu says, doing up the last button, "if he doesn't know who we are, he'll think we're just a bunch of angry citizens wanting to catch him for ruining our town's flag. Nothing different than what he's used to. Even if he did see Marco's face, it wouldn't matter. He won't think of us as much of a threat compared to anyone else," Marco says, building on Aizu's thinking. Aizu nods. "Exactly. Then when he lets his guard down, it will be the perfect time to strike." "But what if he does know who we are?" Thatch asks. Aizu brushes the stray hairs away from his powdered face. "Then he will come to us. After all, he has something he wants to say." "No." Line here. 30 minutes ago. Luffy hears the thump of the boat hitting wood and knows the pirates have docked. They mill around him, totally oblivious to the fact that they have a stowaway hiding pretty much in plain sight. He snickers and squirms forward on the wagon so that his nose almost touches the front. Cautiously, Luffy pulls on his hood and raises his head so that he can peek over the top. The green tarp raises slightly with his head, but not so much to be noticeable. Where's a good escape route? Luffy scans the area around him. It doesn't look too bad. He can probably sneak by. Hey, if only those pirates weren't so damn alert. Not giving the pirate enough time to strike, Luffy springs out of the wagon. Just as his feet touch the ground, another pirate swings his sword down. Luffy swerves to the side just in time, and the sword aims itself in the wooden deck. Get him, someone shouts. Recovering from his previous move, Luffy leaps over the ship's railing and lands on the dock some feet below. As soon as he lands, a wave of dizziness hits him and everything seems hotter. Luffy totters dangerously to the side but catches himself. The once dull pain on his shoulder is now burning hot and throbbing intensely. Another shout snaps Luffy out of his trance. He whips his head around to see the pirates jumping over the railing after him. On the other side, citizens near the port have gathered to see what is happening. Damn, Luffy pulls the hood down to cover more of his face and sprints toward the city. He runs past the gawking crowd before they register who he is. Just before Luffy reaches the city, he registers passing someone with a pineapple head but zooms by without a backward glance. His breathing is labored, more so than he likes, but Luffy forces himself to run faster so he won't get caught. The citizens still haven't realized who he is, and he wants to get away before they do. Eventually, when he is further into the city, Luffy hears footsteps trailing him at a running pace. Crap, those pirates caught up. Without a backwards glance, Luffy ducks into the nearest alley and pushes his body further. These walls are pretty narrow. Luffy grins as an idea comes to mind. He kicks off of the wall to his left and then does the same to the right, so he ends up bounding from wall to wall high up in the air. Shishishi, it's just like the trees in Mount Corvo. Luffy snickers internally. This method brings up his speed and makes it harder for his pursuer to catch him. Luffy jumps through the alleyways, but suddenly notices how darker they are becoming the further he goes. He wonders about that for a second, but soon forgets about it. Straining his ears, Luffy can hear quiet pitter-patter of the person chasing him. He scowls to the sky through his harsh panting. I've got to get away before I can't see anything at all. Luffy pushes off the walls with all of his might and forces himself to go faster. However, as he turns a corner, he realizes how much he can't see. Luffy's foot catches the edge and he immediately loses his momentum. His foot twists against the wall, making him fall and slide across the dirty ground. Ugh! On a shaky arm, he brings himself upright. It's then that the full extent of his exhaustion hits. Sweat pours off his brows and runs into his eyes. Luffy feels something wet on his shoulder but can make a good guess of what it is. He realizes that the darkness is from his own vision, not the alley. But I've got to keep going. He forces himself back up the walls and continues at a pace albeit slower than before. The chase seems to go on forever in Luffy's opinion. Every time he thinks he is home free, those steps return, louder each time. So when Luffy stumbles over his feet yet again, he risks a quick glance over his shoulder. To his surprise and disappointment, he can see the figure just a few meters away. Damn it! Luffy looks up and then springs onto the rooftop. I shouldn't be in the open like this for too long. So Luffy dashes over a few rooftops, then goes down into an alley again. This time when Luffy lands, there is a ringing in his ears that makes his eyes go wide. On shaky legs, he rises and escapes. Not trusting himself to jump properly on the walls, Luffy decides to run on foot blindly into the increasing darkness. Don't pass out, don't pass out, he screams at himself. I've got to go faster. Somehow his legs speed up and he centers his mind on running and nothing else. The corners don't feel like they appear anymore. To Luffy, it's like he's running in a straight line with the thumping of his heart loud in his ears. Everything blurs at the edges of his vision and eventually he can't make out details because it's so dark. You left us here to die. Luffy grimaces and presses a palm to his ear. I should have killed you when I had the chance. He shakes his head and shuts his eyes tightly. It's just my mind playing tricks on me, Luffy tells himself. The voices aren't real, it's all in my head. Yet the harsh comments keep coming. It's your fault we're stuck as slaves. Ace isn't the devil child, you are. Luffy runs faster, trying to escape the jeers around him. Whitebeard will kill you before you even have a chance to say a word. Who would want a whiny, sniveling, weak brother like you? He speeds up even more. Luffy isn't looking where he's going anymore. Sabo would agree with me. He only tolerated you so he wouldn't have to hear you complain. Just go faster. We hate you and wish you didn't exist. Faster. You should just die. Luffy's feet are suddenly off the ground. He doesn't have enough time to bring up his arm when he skids across the earth, kicking up a mountain of dust. He tumbles across the alley, gaining several cuts and bruises on stray rocks. Eventually, Luffy's body slows and he is left lying on his side. Dust clouds rise from around his still figure. The voices have stopped, and Luffy lays in complete silence. His eyes are closed, and he focuses on filling his lungs with much-needed air. After a while, his head clears enough so he can think straight. Luffy strains his ears to listen for the pirate after him, but he hears nothing. Was there even someone after me? I don't know anymore. Luffy sighs and rests on the ground, just trying to recuperate. The cool ground feels magnificent on his overheating body. He presses his cheek further against the cool dirt, trying to push away the sickness threatening to dominate him. I need the stuff from my bag, Luffy thinks blearily. With a considerable amount of effort, he sits up and drags himself next to a large green dumpster. He groans as his back rests against the grimy brick wall. The dizziness returns from the sudden motion and Luffy feels close to heaving. When the sickness passes, he reaches into his bag for the remaining bottle of medicine. Popping off the cap, he immediately grimaces at the smell. It's almost bad enough to bring his nausea back. Luffy shakes his head and tries not to gag as he swallows the substance whole. Hopefully the small amount of medicine does something for him. The wetness of his shoulder is next on the examination list. He pulls the bandage off and sucks in a sharp breath. The skin is really sore and it swells around the stitches. The liquid that Luffy once thought was blood is actually something yellow, and it oozes from his wound. He promptly wipes it off with the inside of his cloak, then rips a piece off with his teeth. The Straw Hat teen wraps it around his shoulder and secures it tightly. Feeling drowsy, Luffy leans back onto the brick wall and closes his eyes. His stomach grumbles loudly, but for once, Luffy ignores it. All of his money has been lost and he has no energy whatsoever to do a dine and dash. With a groan, Luffy realizes he needs to hit the flag. The sooner he does it, the sooner the Whitebeard pirates will come. But I'm just so tired. His breathing slows and Luffy realizes, with a start, that he can't move anymore. His body is already shutting down from exhaustion, willing him to get some rest. With a quick mental sorry to his friends in Foosha, Luffy falls into a deep sleep under the cover of darkness. Line here. Mid-afternoon sunlight peeks out from the top of the buildings, bringing light to the alley Luffy is currently residing. The sun glares on his eyelids, urging them open, but he moves his head away. Luffy's mind bleakly registers something on his cloak and chest. Half asleep, he brushes the unknown thing away with a wave. He sighs in content when the feeling goes away and then relaxes against the wall again. Then it returns, more aggressive, and Luffy frowns. He swats his hand, but this time it doesn't go away. Groaning, he swings harder and this time it retaliates by pushing his hand away. What the? Luffy is done with whatever is disturbing his sleep and opens his eyes. To his shock, the thing on his shirt is hands. They are digging through his pockets trying to find something of value. Immediately, Luffy jumps up with a yell and kicks the raggedy pickpocketer into a building. Luffy immediately runs from the scene. Suddenly feeling compressed, he makes for the first opening into the city. It isn't very far, just a few corners away until he can see the main street. He bursts into the open and breathes in the fresh oxygen that is no longer tainted with must and steel. A few passerbys glance at him curiously, gossiping to their friends. After sucking in as much air as he can get, Luffy calms and thinks of yesterday's events. I was so out of it. Now I can't tell when everything stopped being real. He realizes, was someone chasing me? Or was I just going crazy? Another question pops into Luffy's mind. And why was I like that? Did I get a fever? Luffy feels his head experimentally. I definitely don't have one now. Maybe it's because of the nasty stuff I took last night. Someone bumps his bad shoulder and mumbles an apology as they walk away. Luffy just bites his lip to stifle a cry of pain. Damn Akainu. Just then, Luffy's stomach growls loudly. He looks around the area for a quick grab when his eyes land on a shish kebab stand across the street. It is bustling with customers and the man at the station is busy handing out the delicious snacks. Luffy sneakily makes his way over to the side of the stand. He glances upwards at the vendor, but he seems occupied with the overflow of customers. Quickly, Luffy snatches the meat off the barbecue when he isn't looking. Grinning to himself, the teen walks away unnoticeably from the crowd. He grins even wider. He hasn't had kebabs in forever. Just before he can sink his teeth into the savory meat, Luffy feels a pair of eyes upon him. He looks up and his gaze meets one of a man with pineapple-shaped hair across the street. Luffy blinks in surprise. The man is quite some ways away, yet he has still managed to spot Luffy's theft from that far. However, the aura around this guy seems kind of familiar, but overall very powerful. Meeting his gaze defiantly, Luffy stuffs the meat in his mouth all at once. He chews deliberately slow, unspoken challenge in his eyes. The man just stares back blankly, not moving an inch. Luffy begins to think he is a statue until two men step beside him. The newcomers don't notice him yet, but judging by the way they interact with each other, Luffy guesses they are comrades. In a matter of seconds, they follow Pineapple Guy's line of sight and start watching Luffy too. Not up to staring down three seemingly powerful people, Luffy ducks back into the crowd. He navigates through the hustle, avoiding stray limbs until he reaches freedom. Their stares unnerve Luffy. He ponders this as he walks onto a path leading to the forest. Are they Marines? The thought has Luffy stopping in place. Did they find out he wasn't dead and sent people after him? Marines can't be on these pirate-protected islands. But maybe that isn't enough to keep them away. Luffy shakes his head. Why hasn't he given more thought to this earlier? Sure, those people have a weird appearance, but that can be all part of a disguise. Maybe the person chasing him yesterday wasn't an illusion and was one of those men. Maybe I'm just paranoid, Luffy says mentally, but the deep look in the pineapple guy's eyes makes a stronger argument. He starts walking again. Luffy doesn't know who these people are, but if they are Marines, he is staying as far away from them as possible. Soon enough, the Straw Hatter reaches his destination. The forest is what Luffy considers cute in comparison to his own. The trees are smaller, and the biggest predator here is the size of a small dog. After a bit of walking, he comes across a good-sized water basin. Bushes surround it, offering cover from any onlookers. As a matter of fact, Luffy almost falls into it, but he manages to grab an overhanging branch before it happens. It creaks eerily under his weight and bends, but Luffy swings his feet backwards. His tiptoes catch the ledge and he leans backwards onto the safety of land where he can let go of the branch. Luffy whistles. That was close. Wiping the sweat off his brow, he realizes it's been a while since he last bathed. Being extra careful not to drown, he strips and sits on the edge of the basin. Luffy's straw hat rests preciously tucked under the bushes so it won't be blown away. A good scrub down later, Luffy removes the makeshift bandage on his arm. There's no more pus, which is good, but it's still sore and sensitive. He gently cleans the wound, then reapplies the bandage. With cleaning done, Luffy risks lowering himself into the water. Just in case, he ties a vine from his waist to a tree so he can pull himself out if needed. The teen sinks into the warm water with a sigh. The sky above is as blue as can be with birds chirping overhead. A few squirrels scuttle on a tree nearby, stopping on a branch to nibble on nuts. Despite the relaxing atmosphere, Luffy can't help but let his mind wander. When are the Whitebeard pirates going to show up? He wonders idly. Will I have to take down all of their damn flags before they notice? Line here. Being on an island that's protected by a pirate is odd, especially if you're the pirate that has to do the protecting. It's like a role reversal. The pirates uphold order, prevent any trouble, while the Marines are the ones they keep away. A weird phenomenon. So when Marco sees the kid swipe a shish kebab without paying, he plays Marine and moves to stop him. However, a glance at the boy's wrist holds him back. On it and clamped tightly is a dark blue shackle with a small broken chain link attached to the side. Most likely sea stone, Marco thinks, recognizing the material and color. I wonder if it's on the other wrist too. But the other arm is hiding in the kid's poncho. He moves his eyes to the straw hat peeking from the kid's hood on his back. It looks vaguely familiar, but Marco can't put his finger on it. Then the boy looks directly at him. Marco has to contain a chuckle at the look of surprise he receives. The kid's childish eyes are blown wide and his mouth forms a silent O. It's like a switch. The surprised look is quickly masked into a rebellious one as the boy eats the meat. He chews slowly, daring Marco with his eyes to try stopping him. Marco barely muffles a snort. He gets a better look at him now. The boy seems pale and a little too skinny for Marco's liking. A thought that he's a slave crosses his mind just as Thatch and Aizu approach, fighting as usual. Hey, Earth to Marco. Thatch shouts, abandoning his previous argument. What are you looking at? Marco just points his chin forward. They both turn their heads to the kid who suddenly looks very uncomfortable. Who? Him? Aizu asks, eyes curious. But before his question is answered, the boy slips into the crowd and disappears like a shadow. Who was that? Thatch asks, turning his gaze to Marco. The Phoenix's eyes linger on the spot the kid was just a second ago, then back to his companions. Based on the rough shape that kid was in, I think he may be an escaped slave boy. Aizu hums in understanding. That's a big possibility. The cuff on his wrist was made of sea stone, wasn't it? So that means he's a devil fruit user, right? Marco nods. A slave in the West Blue. Do they even have that kind of market here? Thatch asks in disbelief. It's pretty uncommon, but not impossible. Someone might have brought him over from the Grand Line. Marco says, a faraway look in his eyes. Or he came himself. Aizu says, I don't like seeing kids being forced into slavery. It doesn't sit right at all. If we see that boy again, I want to talk to him and give him a decent meal. Maybe even bring him on the ship. Thatch says, eyes lost in the crowd. Aizu smirks. Thatch, that is probably the best idea you've had in a long time. Line here. It's a few hours later, and after taking a much-needed nap, Luffy feels a little refreshed. He has started feeling dizzy again, not to mention drowsy. Although blaming the dizzy spell on his dip in the water, he can't excuse the way his head suddenly flushes with heat. I need more medicine, but first I'll need to make some money. Luffy grumbles a little. He wishes he knew stuff about medicine so he could just swipe it off the shelves without a doubt. Here I thought I liked doing this, and he does like singing, just not today when he feels like crap. So here Luffy is, going into town on a warm summer night in search of a restaurant to sing at. Eventually he finds one with a big stage at the front. When Luffy enters, there is already someone up front strumming a guitar. He hums along with the tune and approaches the hostess. She's a nice lady, although Luffy thinks she might be taking pity on him when she lets him sing. You can go after the person up now. In the meantime, have a seat at the bar, she says cheerily, gesturing to the wooden structure next the stage. Luffy grins back. Thank you. Suddenly he's glad he bathed. Luffy doesn't know if they'd let him sing otherwise. He sits at the bar, swinging his legs back and forth. Beside him is a large man hunched over his drink. He wears a large green poncho that is frayed around the edges. Luffy, being the friendly guy he is, wants to say hi. I wouldn't do that if I were you. His head snaps to the bartender in front of him. The man is drawing a bourbon glass, and his eyes are focused on the hunched figure beside Luffy. Do what? Say hi, Luffy asks, head tilting to the side. The bartender nods and turns his gaze to Luffy. He's been like this for a while, sulking on his lonesome. I've tried taking to him, but he just doesn't want anyone near. Luffy pouts. Then that's all the more reason to talk to him. Oi, Poncho Asen. He pokes the hunched man. The bartender shakes his head. Don't say I didn't warn you. Then he walks away to serve another customer. Luffy continues to poke his victim. Oi, why are you sad? He stops poking him. Luffy realizes he can hear the guy mumbling to himself. It's so quiet he can only make out a few key words. Couldn't he get me need another other escape but where? Luffy's face looks as confused as ever. Where what? He asks rather loudly. The poncho man sits up abruptly, almost making Luffy fall out of his seat in shock. He whips his head to Luffy and stares at him with wide eyes. The teen just stares back, unsettled. Asen, he asks uncertainly. But suddenly the poncho man has a big grin on his face. Not the good kind, mind you. Instead of talking to Luffy, he sinks back into his original position, but this time with an air of happiness and relief. Luffy just looks away from the man, puzzled. The bartender comes back and ushers Luffy to a seat further down the bar. Congrats, you got him to move. The bartender cheers. Luffy chuckles. Yeah, I guess so. Here, you're singing right. You can eat right now if you want. He pushes a steaming steak in front of Luffy. The teen's mouth waters immediately. You're sure? What if I'm no good? The bartender waves a dismissive hand. Just by looking I can tell you're something special. Don't worry about it, eat up. Luffy grins in signature D fashion. Thank you. He tackles his meal full on, leaving no trace after only a few seconds. Whoa, slow down, the bartender says in mock horror. Luffy licks the plate clean, then slides it back to the man. Slow down, but I'm hungry, and if I'm hungry I should eat. Having experienced Luffy logic for the first time, the bartender looks baffled. Soon enough, he breaks into laughter. I was not wrong, you're special all right. At the corner of Luffy's eye, he sees Poncho Man shuffle. A large grin is hidden in his sleeves. Special indeed, he says, words muffled by his arm. Luffy watches him for a few seconds, then turns back to the bartender. You know what? I'll give you a little extra food in your pouch if you sing well, he says, offering a hand. Deal? Luffy smacks his hand just as clapping fills the room. Deal. The bartender nods to the now empty stage. Your turn. Luffy grins and walks confidently on stage. He steps to the center and removes the straw hat from his back. He places it on the ground in front of him and looks at all the people staring at him expectantly. For some reason, he feels several pairs of eyes burning into his body. He looks around the room but can't see anyone who stands out. With a mental shrug, he starts to sing. Luffy chooses a song Makino used to sing whenever she did the dishes. He and Ace would sit at the bar after a long day of training and just listen to her sing. It was very soothing, and they would both fall asleep right after the song ended. The memory hits him like a bullet and threatens to choke his words. Thankfully, he refrains from ruining the performance. Makino's voice was the best. It was like angels. No, Luffy, he yells mentally. Not was. She's still alive. Stop saying things like they will never happen again. You're doing this to save her, to save everyone. He finishes strong, gaining massive applause from the audience. Luffy does a little bow with flourish, then bends to collect his hat that is filled with money. It's then that Luffy notices Poncho Guy staring at him maliciously, clapping slowly. Then he gets up from his seat and leaves the restaurant. Luffy straightens with a troubled expression. All of a sudden that guy just doesn't sit right with him. Off to the side, the bartender waves him over. Immediately brightening up, Luffy jumps off the stage and hops to the bar. Beyond what I expected, kid. Here's what you earned. The bartender digs under the bar and pulls out a pouch. It's got bread and cheese in there, enough to last you a bit. By the looks of you, I don't think you'll be sticking around this town long. Luffy shakes his head, attaching the pouch to his shorts. He dumps the money in his other pocket. Though, I've got something important I need to do, he says, slipping the straw hat on his neck. Well, I wish you good luck on your journey. Luffy grins widely. Thanks, see you later. He waves, practically radiating happiness. The people here are so nice. Luffy practically skips out of the restaurant. Suddenly, he gets the same sensation that he felt in the market. He turns his head slowly and his eyes widen when he recognizes the 3 men sitting there. The Marines. Luffy internally freaks. The men seem to notice his gaze on them, and that's when Luffy decides it's time to go. He runs out the door, just as they call out to him. I won't be caught by Marines before I see Ace. Luffy makes a break down the street, revving around corners to get out of sight. A sudden blast of nausea has Luffy tripping. He catches his feet and clutches his mouth with his hand. The street is gray and empty. A thick coat of fog hovers above the ground. I ate too much, but the meal was so good and he was so hungry. I should have known I was going to regret it later. Luffy sucks in a mountain load of oxygen and tries to block out the nausea. Better ... Nope. He leans up against a building and breaks into a coughing fit. It lasts for a long time, which surprises Luffy. When it ends, he takes the time to catch his breath, then removes his hand from his mouth. Gross. There's some dark stuff on his hand and he wipes it on the ground. A sharp prick invades the back of Luffy's neck. Eyes widening, he scrabbles for it, but his arm feels sluggish. Eventually all the strength fleets him and he falls face first on the ground. Marines is the first thought that crosses Luffy's mind. Instantly panicking, he urges his muscles to move but they won't budge an inch. No. Pure dread fills Luffy's body. His eyes, the only things that function, flick around desperately. Boots appear in Luffy's vision and he looks up. To his surprise, it's the poncho guy from the bar. Hello my treasure, he says, crouching down to Luffy's height. His voice is scratchy and high. I thought it would have taken more effort to catch you, but you've made this easy for me. Arms surround Luffy's torso and he is lifted from the ground. He's thrown unceremoniously over Poncho Guy's shoulder, leaving his arm and feet dangling helplessly in the air. Unaware to Luffy, his straw hat slips off his neck and flutters to the ground. I suppose I should introduce myself, Poncho Guy says, walking away with Luffy in tow. My name is Ralph, the slave trader. Luffy's heart thuds in his chest. And you're about to make me very rich. Line here. He went this way yoy. Marco, Thatch and Aizu have followed the slave kid from the restaurant. The streets are even more congested with fog, making it harder for the pirates to navigate. This fog is so thick. No wonder there's nobody out here, Aizu says, trying to peer through the murk. Did you guys hear him sing back there? It was so sad and beautiful at the same time. Thatch swoons, wiping a stray tear from his eye. Yeah, who knows what else that kid is capable of? Aizu comments. We can't let him slip away again yoy. Marco says, squinting. This fog is too thick, I can't sense anything. Thatch releases a strangled cry just as hissing splits the air. Can't sense anything, I can't see anything. I feel bad for all the cats I step on tonight. Thatch's complaint dies in the night as they creep forwards. We're sitting ducks out here. Let's just go back to the restaurant until the fog clears up. A crunching sound interrupts Aizu's talking. What kind of cat was that? Thatch asks incredulously. I stepped on something, Marco says, bending down. He feels around his feet until his fingers come upon something straw. What is it, Marco? Aizu asks. The first division commander holds the object up so all 3 of them can look. That's the kid's hat. Thatch exclaims. He must have come this way. Aizu points out. Marco examines the hat in his hands. It's definitely well worn, for starters. The edges are a bit frayed and there are tatters around the top. He flips it with his fingertips. Inside the hat the straw is compressed, indicating it has been worn a lot. It still looks familiar. Where have I seen this? Marco racks his brain but comes up with nothing, to his frustration. A nudge to his shoulder makes him lift his head. What is it yoy? He asks absently. Aizu rolls his eyes. Stop zoning out. If you were paying attention you would have noticed the fog lifting. Marco looks around, and while visibility is still low, they can at least see along the street. He experimentally taps at his observation haki. It's blurry, but I can pick up a trace of his presence nearby. Aizu closes his eyes and tries to sense it himself. I can't pick anything up. It must be your phoenix senses that can trace him. Marco concentrates on the slave boy. His presence seems dimmed. Another presence, much stronger than the boy's, is overwhelming it. They don't separate at all, but move in unison. Funny, to his knowledge the kid doesn't have a companion. I think there's something up yoy. The kid might be in danger. Aizu and Thatch stiffen. If he really is a slave, I guess that would make him a target for some people. Aizu says angrily, hands reaching for his pistols. A serious look crosses Thatch's face and he turns to Marco. Lead the way. Line here. Can you believe it? I found another one. Ralph paces back and forth on the dusty ground. In one hand is a green snail phone and in the other is the speaker which is now pressed against his ear. Someone says something on the other line and Ralph laughs boisterously, spit flying from his chapped lips. I know, the boss won't even notice. Just a few paces away is Luffy, tied to a thick tree trunk. Right now they are in a secluded part of the city surrounded by low-hanging trees. Nearby is a shabby little shack, most likely used as some sort of base for Ralph. The slave trader had carried Luffy all the way to this location while the Straw Hat teen was still drugged. After tying him to the tree, he had pulled the snail phone from his poncho and called someone unknown to Luffy. Yeah, what are the chances? In the West Blue even. Luffy listens to him babble on. Upon observation, he quickly determines that this man is not as terrifying as he seems. If anything, he is extremely annoying. Overconfidence seems to ooze from Ralph in his every action and word. He believes that he has got Luffy good, and that there's no escape for the straw-hatted teen. The thought alone has Luffy pouting. He hates being underestimated. He only got caught by a cheap trick. But the drug is wearing off, quickly too. Eventually Luffy gains feeling back in his limbs. He flexes his fingers and toes experimentally yet discreetly, not letting Ralph know he lost his advantage. Not too far from Luffy's foot is a sharp, thin rock. He shoots a quick glance to Ralph, who is preoccupied with talking on the snail phone. Stretching beyond his limits, Luffy's toes almost touch the shard. Simon. Sweat forms on his skin from the effort and he pulls the stone closer just a little bit. Hoo kid, I must thank you for showing up when you did. Luffy hurriedly pulls back into his original position and glares at Ralph. What do you want from me? He demands, feigning helplessness. Well, I was in a particularly rough spot. I captured a devil fruit user in the North Blue and then told my boss I was bringing him back to the Grand Line. We were going to sell it to those celestial dragon fellas. Luffy darkens at those words. Unfortunately, Ralph continues, face turning sad. There was an incident, and my fruit user was lost. I thought I was done for. The boss would surely kill me if I couldn't bring him what I'd promised. The first time you saw me, I was drowning my sorrows in liquor. He suddenly perks up and grabs Luffy's face in his hand, squeezing his cheeks together. Luffy growls, but can't do anything to fight back. But that is when you, my beautiful savior, appeared. Ralph says lovingly, shaking Luffy's head from side to side. At first I thought you were some brat, but then I recognized the sea stone shackle on your wrist. Others who have not seen one before probably think it's some sort of bracelet. But alas, it's not. He releases Luffy's face and Luffy scowls. If that's all, then take it. I don't want it, he says. If possible, Ralph's malicious smirk stretches even further. No. What I want is not the shackle, but you. Of course, since you are wearing the sea stone, it indeed means you are, in fact, a devil fruit user. Am I right? Ralph places a finger on his chin and a sly look crosses his face. Luffy says nothing. Ralph cackles, then pulls out his snail phone again. Time to call the boss and tell him I'm coming after all. Luffy just glares holes into Ralph's skull. He has no intention of going back to where he escaped from, so the teen impatiently waits until Ralph is distracted. Yes, boss, I will be near the Grand Line shortly. The cargo is still with me too. Ralph speaks into the phone. His tone is eager, excited even. Luffy again attempts to drag the rock closer. This time his toe hooks around the top and he can move it slowly. I'm sorry I took so long. No, I wasn't trying to run away. I was just caught in a storm. Yes, a storm. The rock is flicked next to his fingers. Luffy grasps it and works on sawing the tight rope binding him. I understand. You don't want any excuses. The bottom of the rope thins. The cut slowly expands as he saws. You want him where? The rope stretches, the stress almost too much for it to stay together. Luffy cuts faster, with the other devil fruit slaves then. All right, boss. Luffy stops cutting. The stone drops from his fingers and lands with a soft thud on the ground. Eyes wide, he turns slowly to look at Ralph. Honestly, he doesn't feel annoyed with the situation anymore. He feels pissed. Others, how many more people are out there like him, who have their lives destroyed and torn apart by celestial dragons? Those users the slave traders have, those people the slave traders have, they probably don't have any family left that can help them. At least Luffy has Ace that he can depend on. Those people may very well have no one. Luffy grits his teeth and balls his hand into a fist, rage slowly building. He really wants to punch this guy in the face. What's up, kid? Feeling angry? Too bad, it won't help you much where you're going. Hoo. Ralph laughs, skipping in place. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. The burning anger in Luffy settles into something colder, scarier. Ralph sings on, oblivious to the change in the atmosphere. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. And it's all going to be because of. A loud cracking sound interrupts Ralph's singing. He screeches and runs out of the way just in time when a gigantic tree falls in the clearing. Dust kicks up and fills the air, blocking all visibility. Cough, what the hell was that? Ralph says angrily, hand covering his mouth. Luffy buries his mouth in his shoulder and closes his eyes to shield himself from the onslaught of dust. So this bastard is the one who took him, says a voice coming from the direction of the fallen tree. The dust settles and Luffy looks up to see three men. Three familiar men, he realizes with a scowl. Was it really necessary to knock down the tree thatch? Says the pineapple head to the pompadour man. Of course, Marco. We've got to make a grand entrance to surprise this fool. Thatch gestures to Ralph, whose mouth is open in astonishment. The man wearing a geisha sighs and twirls his gun. Well, it worked, but it wasn't necessary, he says in mild annoyance. Come on, Aizu. I know you wanted to scare this guy as much as I did, Thatch says teasingly. Aizu shrugs, but smirks lightly. Hey. They all turn to Ralph, who has gotten over his shock and stands on shaky legs. What are you doing here? He demands. Aizu points to Luffy, still tied to the tree. We're here to save the kid. Luffy can barely contain a snort of contempt. Looks like they couldn't keep their marine natures under cover. But a small part of him is fearful. Are they going to save him just to bring him back to Foosha? Something cold presses against Luffy's jugular. With a quick glance down, he realizes it's a long sword. Ralph is the one holding the weapon and he clutches it like his life depends on it. And judging by the faces of the trio, it does. Lower your weapon, or Aizu here will shoot you right between the eyes, Marco threatens. Luffy could have sworn he saw neon blue flash in his irises. And no way. Take one step closer and I'll slice his head off. The sword presses further into Luffy's neck, drawing a bead of blood. You wouldn't do that. You need to deliver him to your boss. Aizu sneers, clicking the safety off his pistol. What? You've been spying on me. How long have you been here? Ralph asks in disbelief. Long enough to know you're a complete asshole. Thatch unsheathes his sword and Ralph flinches as it makes a sharp shing sound. I said don't come any closer. Ralph is really shaking now. Even if the sword is cutting him, Luffy's face holds an unimpressed look. What a coward. I'll really kill him. Ralph yells. I don't even need him. I've got plenty more slaves that are worth a lot more than him. Ice-cold fury washes over Luffy. He keeps it hidden carefully under an expressionless mask. Unknown to everyone else, he pulls against his restraints, slowly weakening the rope until they are close to snapping. Marco's gaze flicks over to the boy who has yet to utter a word. Not even his eyes speak, they are shadowed and cast towards the ground. When Ralph makes another movement, Marco focuses back on him. But not without noticing the movement of ropes against the boy. Don't bother faking it, Marco says, voice smooth and eyes like ice. We heard your explanation. Your boss is going to kill you if you don't hand him over. Ralph just glares at them, teeth gritted and head held high despite his situation. A weak man hiding behind a strong facade. Pathetic really. So that means you can't kill him. You have no leverage. The clearing turns silent. Marco, Thatch and Aizu all stare hatefully at Ralph with their weapons unsheathed. Ralph has gone quiet, his gaze trained to the ground. Luffy's face is hidden completely from view. The trio's eyes widen in surprise when a snort escapes the slave trader's mouth. Then it turns to full-blown hysterical laughter and he is clutching his stomach trying to calm himself. I never. Another burst of chuckles escapes Ralph's lips. I never thought I would be killed by a bunch of no-name thugs. I thought my death would be something a little more dramatic. You don't have to die today. You can give us the boy and live, says Aizu. Ralph shakes his head. I'm a dead man either way. If I let him go, the boss will kill me. If I stay here, you'll kill me. He lowers his sword off of Luffy's throat and the commanders relax a little. But if I'm going out, might as well bring one down with me. The trio's eyes widen as he plants a foot on the ground and swings his sword at full strength. Wind splits as it delivers right in the direction of Luffy's neck. Before the pirates can even understand what is happening, Ralph is hurtling across the clearing. He smacks into the fallen tree with a sickening crack and falls to the ground, unconscious. His face is a bloody mess and there is a clear fist imprint in the center. All three look away from Ralph's battered body to the kid who is standing, now free from the ropes. Luffy's fist is raised at his chest. Blood drips off of his knuckles and drips down his arm. No one says anything as he makes his way over to Ralph. When he stands over him, he spits directly on the man's face. You shouldn't have underestimated me. Aizu and Thatch gape like fish while Marco shows only mild surprise. That was definitely not what they were expecting. Luffy turns in the direction of the commanders and walks straight for them without making eye contact. They think he is going to jump in their arms, begging for help. But instead, he walks straight past them as if they aren't there. Luffy only pauses to snatch the straw hat from Marco's hand. Marco swears he hears a light growl. Luffy heads for the forest, eager to escape all of it. This day is just too messed up and he's just so damn tired of being mad. Wait, he stiffens as one of them calls to him. This is it. These stupid Marines are going to capture him. Why is it all so unfair? Are you a slave? Not expecting that question, Luffy turns back to the men. He makes sure to keep a safe distance away. So what if I am? Wouldn't you like to care? He sneers, temper flaring. The stress of the night builds up and he can't help but feel angrier. The men look slightly baffled at his outburst. Look, Yoi, Marco says, raising his hands in a calming gesture. We just want to help you. Garp's false promises and Marines beating his friends flash through Luffy's mind. His eyes blaze in fury and he can barely stop himself from lashing out at them. Help? What a joke. Like you can help me. They're just going to do the same as Ralph would have done to him. But these idiot Marines think it's justice, which just makes them all the worse. You just got kidnapped. What's to stop it from happening again? That guy was weak, but there are way stronger guys out there who can take you easily. Aizu reasons. You're a walking skeleton, kid. We can give you food, then you can come on our ship, says Thatch. Luffy shakes his head and takes a step back. Why does everybody want slaves? Why can't they just let him be free? No, I'll never trust you for as long as I live. I'll never trust anyone, he shouts, pain evident in his voice. Luffy turns back around and resumes his walk into the woods. There's only one person I'll ever trust, he says quietly. Ace, line here. Marco is rooted to the spot as he watches the kid walk away. His spine is straight as an arrow, but Marco can feel the pure rage radiating off of his skinny body. The Phoenix clenches his fists in frustration as the boy's words replay over and over in his head. Won't trust anyone. Shit, kid, what happened to you to be this angry at us? But Marco realizes he wasn't angry at them specifically, but at the world. That cold look in his eyes made Marco shiver. He's 1st Division commander, yet one look made his calm facade break. What scares him is the fact that someone so young can make that kind of expression. The Phoenix takes a step forward, ready to chase the kid and wipe that look off his face when Aizu grabs his shoulder. Leave the kid. Going after him will just make everything worse. He's in no mood to talk to us. But if he leaves the island, he'll be okay. If that punch is anything to go off of, I'd say he's pretty strong, Aizu says amusedly, trying to lighten the mood. When he doesn't succeed, he sighs. Look, we've been going about this the wrong way. He's noticed we were following him around and felt violated. The kid was a slave, for goodness sakes. The last thing he wants is to be trapped. It's totally natural for him to feel paranoid. What are you saying, Aizu? I'm saying exactly what I said before. Leave the kid alone. How would he react if a bunch of pirates abducted him and stole the right for him to choose, just like the beings who owned him? Hearing that just makes Marco want to keep the kid even more, to show him not everyone has to be bad and untrustworthy. He wants to show the kid what freedom is like, what being a pirate is like. He wants to see those round eyes of innocence that were focused on him in the market. He wants to show him how to be a kid again. Guys, Marco and Aizu turn to Thatch, who looks very dejected. He won't last out there, not being that angry. Thatch brings a hand to his mouth. I didn't realize it then, the emotion I was feeling when I heard him sing. But now I realize I was feeling sadness. That kid is so hurt and it kills me inside. Having so many younger brothers and sisters makes me feel protective of the young'uns, you know. He sniffs and wipes his eyes. Oh, Thatch, Aizu says, going up to Thatch and placing a reassuring hand on his back. And you know what? What? Those cold eyes and angry attitude, they remind me of Ace. Marco has already realized this from the moment he locked eyes with him. That is why even if he never sees the boy again, he won't ever forget him. Line here. Luffy crashes through the forest, enraged at those stupid Marines and happy they didn't chase after him. Guess they decided I wasn't worth the effort. His arm and legs entangle themselves in vines and Luffy rips at them furiously for getting in his way. Nearby wildlife hears the commotion and scampers away. It's all their fault I'm like this. They made him think about how Ace isn't here, and possibly too far away to hear his cries for help. What if he's taking too long? Luffy feels the loneliness and helplessness threaten to suck him under. I can't keep going like this for much longer. The difficulty of the situation finally sinks into him. Even Garp wouldn't help him. His so-called justice was the celestial dragons. What if Ace turns him down too? Maybe he already knows that the village is doomed and left him alone. Would Ace do that to me? An array of negative emotions shoots through Luffy. I don't know anything. Would someone just explain to me why this is all happening? Why everybody is so scared and mean? Luffy stops in place and screams to the sky. He runs up to a boulder and kicks it until it reduces to rubble. Then he turns on the nearest tree and punches it as hard as he can. Why? Luffy punches the tree continuously, pretending it's a noble, celestial dragon, Garp, and Akainu. Someone just help me. I can't do this alone. He socks the tree as hard as he can and it flies through the forest. Luffy stops, panting harshly and standing in a hunched position. Tears fall down his face, but he wipes them away quickly. He can pretty much hear Ace and Sabo calling him a crybaby. Then he looks around the clearing, at the result of his temper tantrum. He shakes his head and groans out loud. This rage isn't helping him, it's just taking all his energy. Energy that he could be using to save his village. It isn't like him at all. Taking a deep breath, Luffy sinks against a tree. He closes his eyes and counts back from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He sighs out loud. That feels better. The frustration, worry, and pain has all been taken out on the Marines and Ralph, he reminds himself. Now he has to remember his priorities, like destroying the flag. I've just got to focus my mind on finding Ace and saving the village, not on all the bad stuff that will make me mad. Carefully, Luffy removes the straw hat from his neck and gazes at it fondly. If I want to be Pirate King, I've got to learn how to handle situations like this. Luffy frowns to himself. I didn't notice I dropped my hat when I got kidnapped. That Marco guy brought it with him, but why? To return it to me. Instead of getting angry at the thought, it merely leaves a bad taste in his mouth. He doesn't want any Marine touching Shanks's hat. Another thing too, Luffy returns his hat to its original place. Then he removes a bandage from his sack and ties it around his arm with the help of his teeth. Everyone is targeting me because they know this is sea stone. If I don't want to draw attention to myself, I need to cover it up. He pushes off of the tree and examines the bandages, which are now on both arm and stub. Luffy blinks for a few seconds, then chuckles to himself. He looks like a mummy. Mummies are awesome. Anyway, Luffy pulls on his hood. I've got something I need to do. He sprints through the forest and towards the village. In the teen's pocket are all the materials he needs for the plan. It's the middle of the night, so not one person is outside. Simple torchlight creates limited visibility on the street. Spotted from his time on the pirate ship, Luffy knows what boat he's going to escape on. Even if it takes a while to leave, he thinks he can find a good hiding spot on deck. Just down the street is the flag, sitting flat from no wind. Luffy ducks behind a house so he won't be seen. He looks around for the guards, but the weird thing is, there's nobody defending the flag. Luffy feels suspicious. Every island before this has had at least some form of defense. What makes this one any different? Shrugging, he sticks the matchbox in his mouth and holds the match and paper-covered rock in his hand. He's an expert at this now. The teen peeks out from his hiding spot once again and checks for clearance. Despite the slight chill he feels, Luffy runs out in the open when he sees no one there. This process has to be done as quick as possible. He drops the rock on the ground and with smooth efficiency he strikes the match against the box in his mouth. The match is placed on the rock and it bursts on fire. Spitting the box out, Luffy covers his hand with the cloak and grabs the burning rock. The fire sears his skin through the fabric, yet he does not drop it. He pulls his arm back and closes one eye, aiming right for his target. That's dangerous, Yoi. Luffy drops the rock in surprise and looks behind him, the cloak still covering his face. No way, it's those Marines again. All three are standing there with hard expressions and their weapons out. They came back for me. We finally got you, says the kimono one, Aizu, he thinks. Luffy's heart thuds in his chest and he gets into a battle stance. They're going to bring me back to Foosha. I won't be caught by Marines, he shouts, getting ready to fight them if necessary. They exchange looks and Marco steps forward. Marines, Yoi. He practically spits. Is that who you think we are? You destroyed our pride and honestly think Marines are after you. Luffy blinks in bewilderment. Not that they can see. Then he realizes they don't recognize him from before, they just think he's the offender. Then who are you? He demands. Just then, he notices that Marco's shirt is unbuttoned, revealing a tattoo on his chest. It's different, but Luffy recognizes the symbol immediately. The Whitebeard pirates. And you've caused a lot of trouble for us, Yoi. Finally, something clicks in Luffy's mind and he almost starts sobbing in relief. But it is quickly overtaken by a desperate need to see Ace. Obviously you were trying to send us a message, Marco continues. Would you mind telling us why you went through all this trouble to get us this pissed off? The pineapple head stumbles back in surprise when Luffy grabs his shirt and clutches it. Do you know Ace? He asks, his voice so quiet they can barely hear it. Yeah, we do. He's our crewmate. Luffy's mouth opens in a silent gasp and he clutches the shirt tighter. I need to talk to him. As soon as possible. They stay silent, looking at the now childlike figure attached to Marco. Are you some sort of crazy fan? Aizu asks, raising a well-groomed eyebrow. Thatch grunts in agreement. Yeah, cause this messing around with our flag isn't a light matter. Luffy growls in anger, not wanting to put up with this now. I'm not messing around. I need to see Ace as soon as possible. It's really important. He needs to convince them now. If he lets them go, he'll never get to his brother. What do you guys think? Aizu asks his friends. Thatch shrugs. Well, we need to bring him to Pops anyway. Plus he went through the trouble of burning our flag just to see us. I think we should take him along. Luffy brightens up and removes his hand from Marco's shirt. Thank you, he says brightly, bouncing on the spot. The Whitebeard pirates are baffled. What is up with this mood change? No problem. My name is Aizu. The big-haired guy over there. Hey, ... is Thatch. And the pineapple hair over there is Marco. Marco remains silent. Got a name? Luffy nods his head enthusiastically. Yeah, it's Luffy. Okay, Luffy, our ship is docked over here. Don't think we've forgotten about what you've done, so don't try anything funny, Aizu says, twirling his gun then putting it back in the holster. Their boat is mid-sized. It can hold 4 people comfortably. Marco steps over the railing and Thatch follows along. Luffy just stops and stares at the small vessel. Something prods his back. What are you waiting for? Come on. Aizu ushers Luffy on board. Do you get boat sick or something? Thatch asks, untying the rope from the dock. Luffy shakes his head and snorts in laughter. No, he says, barely suppressing a laugh. This is the ship I was going to hide on. They all roll their eyes as the boat starts to sail into the rising sun. It'll only take a few hours for us to reach the main ship. So until then you can go rest somewhere, Yoi, says Marco. It's no smiles from there. Luffy huddles up on a bench at the port side. He wraps his arm around his knees and stares at the water ahead, waiting for the ship to come into sight. After a few minutes, Luffy can barely keep his eyes open. He yawns loudly and settles on closing his eyes until he can just see through his eyelashes. Upon observation, Luffy notices that the group seems a bit unsettled. It becomes clear when Thatch stumbles over a crate for the 5th time and his friends have to tell him to get some rest. He'll be fine, the teen hears as they walk away. Off to the side, Luffy can hear Marco calling someone on his snail phone. Luffy shivers as the cold ocean breeze stings his skin. He curls further into a ball and tries to muster some body heat. Yeah, Popsy's here. There's some garbling on the other end. Well, there is this one thing, but I'll talk to you about it later, Yoi. It's been a long day. More talk that Luffy can't hear. Is Ace there, by the way? We kind of need him, it's important. Luffy's ears perk up. Okay, maybe he'll be back by the time we return. Pops says something else, quieter this time. Alright, Yoi. Good night, Pops. Marco hangs up and sighs deeply. Luffy shivers again and suddenly Marco turns to look at him. Luffy closes his eyes immediately, but he can still feel the powerful gaze trained on him. He stiffens when the footsteps approach and then pause right beside him. Warmth surrounds him and Luffy realizes it's a blanket. He immediately snuggles into the fabric with a heavy sigh. The teen hears a light chuckle and Marco walks away below deck. Luffy watches him leave with one eye open. When he disappears from sight, Luffy smiles softly and then closes his eyes. Ace has good nakama. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.